I believe we have everything in order here to get going. I'm Gary Upton. I'm the chairman of East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency. It is 7:06 p.m. on Monday, November 16th, 2020. If you could show your hands just so the public know who you guys are, please, and we'll do this slowly. I'd like to introduce the agency members that are here. Kristen Chantrell is our vice chairman. There she is up top. Oh, for me, she's top left. I shouldn't say that. Phyllis Berger, there's Phyllis. Hi, Phyllis. Good evening. And then I'm going to run from the top. An alternate is Mr. Jason Diebel and Rosemary Osfeld. And let me see. We have our ex officio. I'm going to cut in real quick. Our ex officio, Mr. Paul Daigle. And Mr. Fiminster, Don Fiminster. Hi, Don. And continuing to run on, Mr. Dave Schmidt. And do we have anyone else here? Oh, Doreen's there. There you go. Hi, Doreen. How are you? You're muted, but well, if you need to say anything, let's go for it. So we have enough agency members this evening. Can I just do a quick count? How many I count myself? 1, Rosemary, 2, Kristen, Phyllis, and Don, and Dave, 6. So as for an alternate to be seated, we should seat one alternate this evening, correct? And I believe we had seated, how did we do it last time? Jason, you were speaking about the corona issue. I hope you're okay. Refresh my memory, guys, which of whether it was you or Doreen that had been seated for the last meeting.
Jason.
It was Jason.
He tested negative.
Congratulations. All right. So I think it makes sense to seat Jason as a member this evening. All right. And Doreen, thank you for continuing to tag along and pay attention to all this stuff as a member. I would say that's a pretty serious level of service to be the one that's sitting there having no voting power per se in the agency and still paying attention to everything we're doing. So thank you for doing that. It's very important. As everyone knows from the top, before I rip into this agenda this evening, we do have, we've lost one of our regular seated members. And I know in correspondence with another member of our agency, there was someone that was interested. We wanted to put a name forth. So at this point, as an addition to the agenda that I'd like to add to the agenda, I'd like to talk just briefly, real quick, about a potential member. I got some correspondence from Mr. Diebel. Mr. Diebel, could you bring forth the name of the gentleman that you were talking about and tell us what you know about him?
It just disappeared. I'm sorry. Yes, Dr. Gregory McIntyre has expressed an interest. He's a scientist. He's been involved in drug testing research and development for about 30 years. Most of his work tends to do with the biomedical sciences. I think he is a doctor of toxicology. He went to my alma mater, which is University of Delaware. So he's a fellow Blue Hen.
And obviously an East Lyme resident, just to clarify for everyone.
Yes, he is from East Lyme.
Okay. So I believe this is something we would just put forth to Mr. Daigle. If I'm not, Mr. Daigle probably wants to unmute himself. We could go to the Board of Selectmen and discuss this gentleman. Is that correct, sir?
We have an agenda item on our meeting this week for a replacement. I'm not sure if this gentleman is being put forward, but we do have it on there, so we'll address it on Wednesday evening.
Okay.
Would you like me to forward his resume to you, Mr. Daigle?
Yes, if you would, just in case there is another person being put forward. They didn't list the name in the agenda yet, so I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. As a potential discussion and influence on that topic, it would seem to make sense as our suggestion. It would be my opinion to put forth. I'd like to make a motion. How about that? Sue Spang, if I could make a motion. My motion would be to move Mr. Daigle, pardon me, Mr. Diebel. You can see where I got chewed up there. from a alternate to a regular seated member, replacing the absentee of Mr. Koch.
Is this just for tonight or permanent? Just for tonight, right?
No, going forth permanently, it would be my recommendation. I know procedurally, he's already seated as an alternate. It makes sense. The Board of Selectmen have vetted Mr. Diebel to put him in place. I would presume that would be an acceptable movement, but I would obviously need a second in the support of my agency to do so.
So I just want to be clear, you're moving into a full member.
If he so chooses, I
Okay.
suppose we'd want to hear from him.
Is that our choice to make?
Mr. Chair, I think per the bylaws, I don't know that the agency can do that as the members are appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Right, this is just a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. That's why that's why.
Oh, okay. Just,
Yep.
yeah.
I just wanted to make a motion to make that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
So they can't hear us talking.
I don't think they
I'll
can.
second the motion.
You guys, it's not muted.
Yeah.
Whoever that is talking, we can hear you talking. And it's okay. Thank you for everyone's patience with this silly Zoom way of doing this job. It's tricky. None of us really like this. So that would essentially, going back to what my motion would be, to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for Mr. Diebel to replace our long-lost Mr. Koch. Do I hear a second from any of my agency members?
I'll second.
We have a second from Ms. Chantrell. Any further discussion, questions that you guys would like to have about this? If anyone has anything to say, please unmute yourself and do a good yell or scream. All right, so at this time, I'm going to take a vote on this matter to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Diebel replace the Mr. Koch.
Excuse me.
Well,
I was going to ask just what Jason could tell us about himself.
sure. Sounds like a good idea. The motion still stands, and the question for Mr. Fimister is to have Mr. Diebel tell us a little more about himself.
Sure.
Just to put you on the spot.
Well, I guess anyone who knows me knows that I am a doer and a lifelong learner. I've had a diverse and varied set of experiences that have led me to this point. I am trained as a math and science teacher in middle school, so I have a modicum of expertise in slope and geometry and finding X and Y. But in addition to that, I've also had a career as a performer doing music, stand-up comedy. I've had books published. I'm a children's book author, illustrator. I had a web comic for several years, so I understand the rudiments of running and sustaining your own business, although mine was online and not in brick and mortar. I believe I was trained as a teacher. All the other stuff I had to kind of teach myself. So I really believe in doing your research and figuring out how to find out more and how to find good information and use it to make something happen. I have 2 kids, 2 cats, a wife. Very nice house. I like plants.
Thank you, Mr. Diebel. I would say something that we could note, Mr. Diebel does attend all of our meetings, even when he's been here, as Doreen has done the same for many of them, and Sandy also. We haven't seen Sandy, I think, this last meeting and this one. Yeah, we appreciate, again, that interest and effort. So we do have a motion that stands. I'm going to take a vote from the top unless there's any other questions. Mr. Fimister, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Gary, I have a question. Can I recommend Doreen as well, just to give her background information so that Mr. Daigle is familiar with both, I guess, potential candidates for the position?
I think that makes sense. Good time to talk about it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Doreen Ryan. My background, I have a a bachelor's degree in natural resources. I worked for an environmental consulting firm, working on environmental risk assessments for about 12 years until I had my triplets. And then after I had them, I've just been a stay-at-home mom. But I had reached out to try and join this committee because I thought it would be a good use of my degree and a way to get involved in the community. So that's basically my background.
And I think, talking out of line here, but whether someone's a regular seated member or an alternate, clearly we can see that even this evening, Jason is an alternate. I mean, it seems to be happening more and more. We've got some age on the board now, and I imagine things will be turning over more and more in time. It's just the way things go, right? So we've got a good crew. I was told by someone in the field we have one of the best agencies in the state, which I thought was really a nice compliment. So everyone should pat themselves on the back. I still have that motion. Finish off with that. All in favor of the prior, just a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. That way we can leave it on them and we don't get in trouble for the choice. I'm joking. All in favor of Mr. Diebel, myself from the top. I made the motion. Moving down to Mr. Diebel himself, I suppose we can't have you vote on yourself, can we? Ms. Chantrell? Aye, too. Rosemary?
Aye.
Continuing down to Mr. Phimminster?
Aye.
Aye, and Phyllis? Aye, David Schmidt?
I'm going to abstain. I just don't feel I have enough information to make an educated decision.
Fair. Understood. And who's hiding? Sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing. Am I missing someone, guys? They've disappeared. Doreen, Dave, Jason. I suppose it's
That's
one,
everybody, I think, because, yeah, we had, yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5 ayes and 1 abstention, for the record. All right, so sorry about that little sidetrack, everyone. This evening, moving on to the next, or still on this particular agenda item, additions to the agenda. I don't believe there are any other additions to the agenda. Ms. Lindo or Mr. Gaishel, do you have anything that needs to be added?
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. So the next item is our public hearing, but at this time, I personally would like to make a motion to take the agenda out of order in an efficient, in a desire for efficiency. I would like to take item 7A and put it before everything else. That's our regulation change. I believe we are at a point where we have minimal conversation regarding this item. And then I believe this would allow us to focus all of our attention to the application of Harvest Church Fellowship of Niantic. So I'd like to make a motion to take the agenda out of order. I'm doing this for you, Sue, sorry. And first thing up would be to take item 7A. All right. Kristen, I couldn't hear you. You put your hand up. That's a second.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion stands for this. Any discussion from my?
Yeah, I have discussion. So I think we had talked about how we were going to look at the resolution and that we were going to discuss that. So I would prefer if we keep that where it is and do the public hearing.
You wanted? Yes, we would look at the resolution, of course, which we have prior to the meeting as information. But you can vote that way, right? Is that okay if you just vote?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if the public hearing turns out to be extensive, we can always continue it next time as well. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'll vote. Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion or questions before we vote? All right. So from the top, I'm in favor of the motion. I made the motion to take it out of order. Mr. Deevil, you're seated this evening as an alternate regular member. Your vote, sir?
Yes.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of this. Kristen Chantrell?
Yep.
Yes. Rosemary?
No.
Okay. Paul, Doreen, user, Dan. Don?
No.
Okay, Don is opposed. Phyllis? Phyllis is 4. And Dave?
No.
Not 4. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor and 3 opposed. The 4s have it. The ayes have it. So we're going to take the agenda out of order this evening. Item number 7A, application of Town of East Lyme. Other than that, the rest of the agenda, my intention is to keep it on point as it stands. So, with that in mind, where do we stand, folks?
So can I then, since we did discuss this at length previous meetings, can I make a motion based on the information from the record and hearing from the public? The agency wants to extend the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay.
Didn't we already do that last time?
No.
We already did that. That's already done because then we had Gary draft the resolution. That step is already complete, correct?
Incorrect.
So all we made the motion for was for Gary to draft the resolution.
Based upon the pieces we asked for. I second the motion. The motion stands. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure. I just want to understand.
Yeah. So we made a motion for. We had voted to have Mr. Gaishel make a supporting motion based on 300 feet, which I believe he has done in writing for us under the town hall, all the information from tonight, which is posted on the town hall. And that can be entered into the record, I suppose, not part of the public hearing. But we do have a motion that stands to change. Sue, did you understand what was stated? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think so. I've got based on information from the public and evidence presented, we are changing the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet. Is that what you said, Kristen?
Yeah, that is what I said.
Based on information from the public?
Based on information from the record and hearing from the public.
Okay.
I have a procedural question, and it looks like Mr. Daigle is raising his hand as well.
Are you planning on having Mr. Gaishel or someone read the resolution into the record?
I
Hold on, slow down. At this point, if we want to read the resolution in, we can. It's not the motion that stands, but if you want that as a supporting, I mean, if that makes sense to you, Mr. Daigle, we can do that. Let's do that.
Well, what are you approving, a motion or the resolution?
We are approving a motion. Well, right now, a motion stands. It's not approved, right? So we're gonna vote on the motion.
So I just have a question for Mr. Zamarka. What is the correct sequence of events right here? Do we need to approve the resolution with this motion, or will that be a separate motion that we make?
No,
Because
the resolution, the agency requested staff to draft a resolution changing the upland review area from 100 to 300 feet. That's what is before you tonight. That is what you should be voting on. Because if you just vote to increase it from 100 to 300 feet, you're not stating any reasons, therefore, from the record, and that could impact the decision on appeal. What we've done is set forth a resolution that sets out the statutory and regulatory basis for what you are doing, as well as the information from the record in support of that motion, or in support of that change from 100 to 300 feet. That's what is up for discussion and possible vote tonight.
So what I think makes the most sense based on what I just heard from you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that perhaps the motion that was just made be amended that we make the motion to approve the resolution, and then we take this next period of time to discuss the resolution, make any appropriate edits, and then we'll decide on the resolution, correct?
You can do it that way, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we do everything procedurally correct.
Well, probably the best thing to do would be honestly to table that motion and just discuss the resolution first, because there may be some substantial changes that you
Yeah,
may make after having gone through it.
Right.
All right, so if it's okay, Kristen made the motion. Is it okay with you to table this motion? We understand it's still here, and we're going to discuss this resolution just for a minute.
Yeah, whatever's the proper procedural way about going about
Again, guys, I want to stay efficient on this. I know we can just keep whirling our heads for endless time on this simple little thing, and we do need to try and get to this church matter. Of course,
Well,
because
that's why I hope that we could do this later, but I think this is going to take some time to make sure that the resolution is appropriate if we're going to, this is what is going to be challenged.
So, would you like to, does someone want to read that resolution in?
Maybe Gary Gaishel, since he wrote it. Is it possible to screen share, Gary?
I can.
That would be helpful.
And I do want to take a moment to remind the agency and Mr. Gaishel, I saw the correspondence. We had previously had a motion that stood on the table regarding statement of opinion from town staff. That motion failed. I do now see submitted in the record that same piece of data that was previously essentially not requested. So I'd like us to stay focused on the resolution, please. Thank you, Mr. Gaishel. Also remembering that is none of this discussion is part of the public record.
Is there any more?
It is part of the record. It is not part of the public hearing. The discussions that the agency has, if an appeal is taken, will be part of the record on appeal.
Right, Mr. Zamarka, which is why I do believe that correspondence is inappropriate. We previously voted to not have that done. That was at our last meeting. I believe we had a 4-3 vote by the agency to not have a statement provided by Mr. Gaishel. I believe Mr. Koch made the motion
2 meetings ago.
2 meetings ago. So I just think it's important. We need to stick with what we decide and what we vote before the public. And here we are, taking these side movers. It looks a little questionable in my opinion. So if we could focus on the resolution, I think that's appropriate. I do believe that piece of evidence shouldn't be part of the record.
Gary, I'm not sure what you're talking about. For me to write these, I don't know what you're talking about. What piece of evidence?
Mr. Gaishel, you can clarify.
So I wrote a memo, as I typically do with any resolution or motion that I bring forward to the commission. And usually that memo contains findings based on the record. It's my opinion, obviously, being written. It's also my recommendation to the agency. That said, the memo that I did put into the record, in my opinion.
Content of the, Mr. Gaishel.
Yes, sir.
The question was what it was, not what it said. Thank you.
Fair enough.
We already know your.
I don't need to read it. I'll just read the resolution, Mr. Chair. Draft resolution amending section 2.1 of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Regulations. Whereas on June 8, 2020, the Town of East Lyme Inland Wetland Agency, agency, initiated an application for a text amendment to section 2. Thank you, Jen. 2.1 of the East Lyme Inland Wetland Regulations, regulations, to change the definition of, regulated activity, by enlarging the distance of the boundary for a regulated activity from 100 feet from an inland wetlands and or watercourse to 500 feet application. And whereas the agency has statutory authority to enact and amend inland wetlands and watercourses regulations and to determine the boundaries of inland wetlands and watercourses for the Town of East Lyme. And whereas pursuant to General Statutes 22A, 42A, it is the purpose of the agency to regulate activities affecting the wetlands and watercourses within the town of East Lyme, and whereas it is the purpose of the regulations in pertinent part to preserve, protect, and maintain wetlands and watercourses by minimizing their disturbance and pollution, and to maintain and improve water quality in accordance with the highest standards set by federal, state, or local authority, section 1.1, and whereas the agency has the statutory authority to regulate activities in areas around wetlands or watercourses, commonly known as the Upland Review Area, quote, URA, provided such regulation is in accordance with the provisions of the regulations adopted by the agency and apply only to those activities which are likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses, CGS section 22A-42A, subsection F, and whereas section 2.1 of the regulations defines, quote, regulated activity, end quote, in pertinent part as any operation within or use of a wetland or watercourse involving the deposition of material or any obstruction, construction, alteration, or pollution of such wetlands or watercourses. And whereas section 2.1 of the regulations defines the URA as, quote, any clearing, grubbing, filling, grading, paving, excavating, constructing, depositing, or removing of material and discharging storm water on the land within 100 feet measured horizontally from the boundary of any wetland or watercourse, end quote. And whereas the agency initiated the application to amend section 2.1 to enlarge the URA from 100 feet from an inland wetlands and or watercourse to 500 feet. And whereas pursuant to CGS section 22A-42A subsection B and section 15 of the regulations, a public hearing is required for any proposed amendment to the regulations. And whereas the application was the subject of a properly noticed public hearing that began on July 13, 2020 and was continued to August 10, 2020, after which the public hearing was closed. And whereas during the public hearings, the agency listened to hours of testimony. The agency also submitted into evidence numerous documents and reports in support of its application. And whereas following the close of the public hearing, the agency deliberated and discussed the application at length and considered all the evidence in the record. And whereas during its deliberations, the agency determined that the proposed text amendment should be revised to enlarge the URA from 100 feet to 300 feet rather than 500 feet. And whereas the revision from 500 to 300 feet is less onerous than the proposed amendment, so that a new public hearing was not required. And whereas any amendment to the regulations must be supported by substantial evidence in the record. And whereas enlarging the URA from 100 to 300 feet is reasonably designed to enable the Commission to protect and preserve the wetlands located within East Lyme in fulfillment of its statutory duty. And whereas the amendment enlarging the URA from 100 to 300 feet is supported by the following substantial evidence. Whereas Exhibit E, a letter of support from the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources dated June 4, 2020, recommends, quote, the review area be extended to at least 300 feet to facilitate expert nonpartisan review by the Inland Wetland Agency of development projects that have the potential to degrade town wetlands, surface water bodies, or underground drinking water aquifers, end quote. And whereas Exhibit CCC, Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources 2018 Drinking Water Report, Exhibit DDD, letter from Margaret Miner, environmental consultant, to Gary Upton, chairman, and members of the East Lyme Wetlands Agency, dated July 13, 2020. Exhibit UUU, the USGS 1998 groundwater and surface water, a single resource. Exhibit VVV, the IPCC 2014 freshwater resources. Exhibit VVV, Chapter 3, freshwater resources from the 2014 synthesis report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, support the continued regulation of inland wetlands and watercourses. And whereas, based on the foregoing, the agency finds that there is substantial evidence in the record to amend section 2.1 of the regulations to change the definition of a regulated activity by enlarging the distance of the boundary for a regulated activity from 100 feet from an inland wetlands and or watercourse to 300 feet. And be it therefore resolved that based on the foregoing substantial evidence in the record, the agency hereby amends 2.1 of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations to read as follows, quote, a regulated activity means any operation within or use of a wetland or watercourse involving removal or deposition of material or any obstruction, construction, alteration, or pollution of such wetlands or watercourses but shall not include the specific activities, I believe that should be specific activities in section 4 of these regulations. Furthermore, any clearing, grubbing, filling, grading, paving, excavating, constructing, depositing or removing of material and discharging stormwater on the land within 300 feet measured horizontally from the boundary of any wetland or watercourse is a regulated activity. The agency may rule that any activity located within such upland review area or in any other non-wetland or non-watercourse area is likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses and is a regulated activity, period, end quote. This amendment shall be effective the day after legal notice of same is published. I believe that is all.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gabriel.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There's everybody. So, Ms. Chantrell, how would you feel about adding that to your motion?
Yeah, can I amend my motion then to say on approval of the resolution?
I think that makes sense unless any commission members, yes, you can do that, and I think that sounds good. Is there anything, Rosemary, you were concerned about that? Is there anything that's jumping out at you, like, no way, that's wrong, or anything like that?
I would just like to take a minute or to look at the record once again, because I know there were some documents that were discussed in our discussion last time, which were part of the public record, and I'm not sure if all of those are present in what Mr. Gaishel wrote. So I would like to take a minute to just go through the record again. I'm also not sure if we want to explicitly state.
Keep in mind, Ms. Chantrell has stated basically a very catch-all, all of the record.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's fine. Yep.
It's
Yep.
Mary's given us some nice bullet points. She also, if we could get it back from Sue, just to make sure that we know it's written how she intends it.
That would be great. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're doing everything.
Mr. Point, has the motion been seconded before you have further discussion?
Yes, I seconded the motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Daigle. Thank you for staying honest to do it right. I appreciate it. Sue, can we just check with you just how you have things worded?
Sure. So basically, I've got the motion, which is based on information from the record and the public hearing and evidence presented. We are changing the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet upon approval of the resolution.
Upon approval of
I wasn't sure where to put that, so.
I think to say including elements or including the including items from the resolution drafted by Mr. Gaishel. That's what I would say. Does that make sense?
No. I don't know. I guess if it makes sense to you, that's what I'm going to put.
Kristen, you're muted.
Kristen, you're muted.
Sorry. Based on information from the record and the public hearing, the agency moves to approve the resolution to extend the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet.
That's great. That sounds good. Everybody's kind of nodding. All right, thank you.
Nicely done.
Thanks.
I might have you say that one more time. 1 second.
Okay.
I believe the intent is the resolution, and as you were stressing, Ms. Osfeld, to essentially not miss any pieces of data that we put in. I'm understanding how that could be wordsmithed using what Ms. Chantrell is saying, that we've got the resolution for Mr. Gaishel and any other supporting information from the record.
Yeah. Kristen, do you want to say it one more time and then Sue can just read it back to us?
Sure. Based on information from the record and hearing from the public, the agency wants to approve the resolution to extend the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet.
Or makes a motion to,
Yeah, that'll be the motion. Does that make sense, Sue?
Yeah, I did not hear anything about the resolution in that one.
The agency wants to approve the resolution.
Okay, approves the resolution. Okay, from 100 feet to 700 feet, 300 feet.
At the upland review area.
700. Ooh, careful. We're getting in a lot of trouble.
everybody's eyes are like, what?
Yep,
Might
okay.
be below.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I would caution the agency on, as with any legislative body, which is what you're operating as right now, you speak through your written resolutions. So it's fine to say that you are considering all of the evidence in the record, which the resolution clearly shows. But if this is appealed, the court will look at the reasons stated specifically in the resolution as being the reasons for your decision. So if there is other evidence you feel is not reflected in the resolution, this is the time to amend the resolution to make sure all of the information or all of the exhibits you want are in there.
Understood, but we're not going to cite every member of the public that showed up and spoke in favor and all of those things, right?
I think there might be a few things like,
This is, Rosemary, I caution you that this is a slippery slope. That's why
fine.
I say all of the presented supporting information, rather than to nitpick pieces out that might not be the most supporting pieces. It's like, here, I'll give you an example. Margaret Miner, right? Is that the right, am I saying the right lady's name? She came and she said something. As an expert in the field, she had an opinion, but she didn't give us scientific pieces of measurements and data, right? Is that evidentiary? She's an expert. You know, if we don't cite that her statement is a piece of the evidence, we go down the slippery slope. Mrs. Marker, go ahead. I see you want to say something.
I just want to make sure that everyone on the agency is aware that you are speaking through the written resolution. So if you feel there are exhibits that should be reflected in there as a basis for your decision, they should be in the resolution.
that's where, yeah.
Right. So my point is, assuming this is going to be appealed, on review, the court will look at the reasons listed in the resolution to decide whether there is evidence in the record to support what is set forth in the resolution. The court will not go beyond the four corners of the resolution, pardon me, in trying to decide what you based your decision on. So the resolution in these matters needs to be as complete as possible. That's all I'm saying. If you feel there is sufficient evidence and exhibits set forth in the resolution, that's fine. I just want to make sure everyone understands.
Is it then that your recommendation would be to go back again and work on the resolution?
No, my understanding was the agency had asked for a draft of a resolution, which is before you now, and the purpose was to decide whether there were any changes any members of the agency would like to make to the resolution.
Are we allowed to state like specific things like concern about drought, climate, and then list exhibits that support that evidence, or is that not advised?
No, you certainly can, but remember it has to be evidence that's reasonably related to the East Lyme inland wetlands. The purpose of the resolution is to set out your decision and list the bases for your decision. What you have before you now sets forth the statutory and regulatory bases, as well as some of the exhibits from the record.
Mr. Zamar, when we approved the, for example, Twin Valley Lakes, one of the things we did was we said we're going to enter into the record all of the record. And we didn't go through and say every single little item from the past record.
No, that's true.
But
all of that was in the record. But when the court looks at the appeal, the court starts with the resolution. And if the court finds that there is sufficient evidence or substantial evidence, pardon me, in the record to support any of the reasons listed in the resolution, that's how it goes about it.
So all I'm saying is the resolution and all the other supporting information, I understand and I believe and agree with this, and all the other supporting information and documents that were provided during the public hearing. outside of the four corners of that piece of paper.
As I say, I'm not trying to drag anybody down a rabbit hole here. I just want to make sure everybody understands that you need to be comfortable with the resolution and especially the exhibits set forth in support of the decision. That's all. I'm not suggesting anything be added, deleted, anything like that.
Yeah, and our town experts on the matter, the Conservation of Natural, the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources is our first reference in the letter. There are experts in town, so I would like to keep my motion as stated.
All right. Thanks. I just wanted to thank you for, I just want to make sure I understand exactly the best way to do this. And if it, if it is detrimental to leave out certain things that, okay.
So the motion, let's hear this motion that we think we're making.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Politely, somewhat politely. Can we hear from you, Sue, what you have to say?
Okay, so I'm going to read this back. Based on information from the record and the hearing from the public, the agency approves the resolution changing the upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet.
Yes. Those words sound good.
Yes.
That's our motion.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, from the top down, any further discussion?
Has there been a second?
Yes, there already was from Gary. It was Kristen, then Gary.
Here I am taking the roll call. I'm the chairman. I'm in favor of this motion to approve. And we're moving down. Mr. Diebel.
I approve. I'm in favor.
That's 2-4. Ms. Chantrell.
I'm in favor.
3. Ms. Rosemary Osfeld.
I approve.
And moving down, we're going to, sorry, Don, there you are. Can't hear you. Jen, can you unmute him?
Hello?
There you are.
I vote no.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Berger. If your hand's up, that's yes? Yeah, okay. And then Mr. Schmidt.
No.
All right, so we have 2 noes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. The ayes have it. The motion stands. Nice job. May we move on from this matter, guys. Thanks for working on this together. That was some hard stuff. And Sue, you've got that motion tight, and I like what you repeated the last time. It sounded perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. And thank you to everyone that is here patiently from the public and the applicants. You guys, I hate to do that and make you sit and listen to us do that, but we have been working on that thing for, really, this agency's been working on that, many changes, but that is one of the biggest changes we've been working on for years. I can say years. Mr. Gaishel, when was that first started?
I'd say about a year ago, we had a subcommittee that worked on it for a good 6 to 8 months. That work, essentially, with your motion, that work contemplated a 200-foot upland review area and a number of other changes to the regulations,
Sure.
all of which didn't happen.
The subcommittee was it was a lot longer than a year ago. It was prior to me being here, which would have been 4 years ago, right? Because we had, it was previous chairwoman, Miss.
And I've been on the committee 2 years.
Yeah. So it was 5 years ago, I think.
So it started, yeah, about 2 years ago, anywhere between the last 2 to 5 years.
Okay. All right, guys. So moving back to the agenda in order, we'll go to Section 2, Item A, application of Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic for the construction of a church. We have a public hearing for this matter. So at this time, we want to hand the mic, the MC, or at least the DJ, is Miss Jen Lindo. And we'd like to hear members of the public. I'd like to remind people, if you have something to say in support of or against this matter, that you remain polite. It's pretty simple stuff. If you want to talk, we'd like to keep it to about 5 minutes the first time around. If you'd like to go again, that's perfectly fine, but please allow anyone that wants to speak the opportunity to do so prior to going a second time. Remember, we are trying to, obviously, this commission wants to hear your opinions on this matter, and I'm going to read in here the application of Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic for the construction of a church, construction of an 8,450 square foot church building, a 72-car paved parking lot, and associated improvements on a 21.7 plus or minus acre parcel located at North Bridebrook Road, East Lyme Assessor's Map 24.0 Lot 7. Limited clearing, grading, and replanting of previously cultivated areas are proposed within a portion of the 100-foot upland review area. There will be no proposed activity within any wetlands, within any wetlands area. So anyway, little wetlands that would have sufficed. So at this time, if there's anyone from the public that wants to say something. I'm getting a no from Miss Lindo.
We need to read in some exhibits, and then the applicant needs to make their presentation before we have public comment.
Sorry, I'm just doing things the silly fast way. Go for it.
So, Gary,
read
do you want to read the exhibits in, or do you want me to read them?
Sure, I'll read them. That's fine.
Okay.
We have Exhibit A, application of Harvest Christian Fellowship for a wetland permit to construct an 8,450 square foot church and 72-car paved parking lot. Exhibit B is the Harvest Christian Fellowship prepared by Indigo Land Design LLC's the original plan set dated 9/8/2020. Exhibit C, the legal ad for the town clerk in the London Day publication. Gonna have to look back. Make sure we get the right, I believe it was published in the November 4th and November 12th editions of the Day. Exhibit D are the certificates of mailing dated 11/5/2020. Exhibit E, a staff review of the East Lyme zoning official, Bill Mulholland, dated 10/29/2020. Exhibit F, staff review of the East Lyme town engineer, Victor Benny, dated 11/13/2020. Exhibit G, revised plans dated November 13th, 2020 for Harvest Christian Fellowship prepared by Indigo Land Design. And Exhibit H, a drainage report revised to November 13th, 2020. Exhibit I, a drainage map revised to November 13th, 2020. Exhibit J, an aerial overlay map. And Exhibit K, staff review from zoning dated 11/16/2020. That's where we ended.
Okay, Joe, you're up. I don't know if you want to screen share, but it is turned on if you would like to do that.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Wren. I'm a professional engineer with Indigo Land Design in Old Saybrook. And we had a presentation with you last month, as you recall, but of course, the decision was made to have a public hearing on this matter. So since then, we did send out all the mailings. One of your exhibits is the certificate of mailing and the legal notice that went out with that mailing. So tonight is the opening of the public hearing and the very first meeting that we have that is a public hearing. So we will go through a detailed presentation. Also on the call with us are Pastor Randy Hyde from Harvest Christian Fellowship, along with Mr. Scott Long from Harvest Christian Fellowship as well. And we have Rich Snarsky, who flagged all the wetlands out there, evaluated the open water courses for vernal pool activity, and he's here in the end for any questions. To get started, as Jen mentioned, I will share my screen. So can everyone now see my screen?
Yes.
Certificate of mailing. Okay, so just to close the loop, we sent all the letters out. Here's the postmarked document. There were 29 property owners within 200 feet of the property. So all of these went out on November 5th in accordance with your regulations. The site is located North Bridebrook Road. This is the cover sheet from the site plan set. You can see North Bridebrook Road here. Woodrow Drive is a small cul-de-sac that about 6 houses front on. At the end of that cul-de-sac, there's frontage for this 21.7 acre parcel, which is a remnant lot from the Nathan Hale Farm subdivision, which is located right up here. It's one of those lots from that subdivision. Has not been developed since. It has been a cultivated field for many years. This next exhibit is on the left is what it looked like, the area looked like in 1934. On the right is what it looks like today. And you can see in this photograph that the entire area was part of the Scott Farm. I don't know since what year, but it was cultivated for many, many years. Right through here, you can see this opening. Those were the overhead power lines, 1934, and you could see that same swath through the landscape today. Those same overhead power lines, obviously upgraded since, but they were there then and they're there now. Woodrow Drive obviously has been developed since. That was all cultivated area. So this location here on the right-hand side, that is what was recently cultivated. We still have the burrows and the mounds in the field out there. It's it was allowed, hasn't been cultivated in a couple of years, but it has been cultivated for the last 100+ years. So any obviously pesticides, fertilizers that were applied over that long time, all since the property grades down from this northeast corner down to the southwest where the wetlands are on the property, all any pesticides and fertilizers made it down in that direction over that number of years. So what we're going to show you is what's being proposed. And although there is a proposed building and a parking lot, with all the low impact development provisions that we have implemented, along with the stormwater management basins and water quality features, it's our opinion that the water quality leaving and entering back into the wetlands is actually improved with this development versus what's been there for many, many years with no protections whatsoever. Just changing the screen, this next exhibit, most of what I show you here are exhibits already in your file. This particular one is an overall aerial photo current of the site with the site plan development superimposed on it, just so you can see how things relate to the open areas versus the wooded areas and so forth. This is one of your exhibits as well. So you can see all of this area up here is all open. You can see the tree line down on that side. You can see up on the northwest and southwest, you can see that there's a pretty defined tree line up in here, and this little jut out here is mostly kind of overgrown brushy area in there. The footprint of the access driveway, the parking lot, and the building is all in the open field area, so there's no clearing or tree removal necessary for that. You can see that goes right up along this edge. This green area here is basically a farm road that comes off of Woodrow Drive and goes up along the edge here. So we're not going any further, any closer to the wetlands than what's there today. These stormwater management basins here, these two, there is some clearing, some brush clearing necessary for those. But all of the stormwater from the parking lot, the access road, and the rooftop all goes through these stormwater management basins, which are vegetated. They're wet bottom vegetated basins that cleanse the stormwater before it releases it back into the buffer area. And then from there, it travels overland a significant distance before it gets entered back into the wetland. Bride Brook comes through this wetland and then crosses on North Bride Brook Road through the site, but we're several hundred feet away from that water course through the buffer and through the wetlands. We did have a site walk back in October with some of the members of the commission. It was a very informative site walk, walked up through the field. We walked down through the wetlands over here, and then there's an open water course to the northwest of the site. several hundred feet away from the proposed building. And Mr. Snarsky, who's on the call, evaluated that open pond for any vernal pool activity. And he did not define that pond as a vernal pool, but he did find a few salamander egg masses in the southwest corner of that pond, again, which is very, very far away from the proposed development. And he can get into some more of those details momentarily. So with the members that showed up for the site walk, we walked down through there. We saw that. We saw the distance at where everything is going to be. And it seemed like everyone at the site walk was comfortable that day with the development. If you look closely on this map, you'll see this dashed line, which is the 100-foot review area from the wetlands. And in there, you can see part of this cultivation, the cultivated field area up to the tree line. Instead of just leaving that as it is, there will be some supplemental planting in there, as well as along this border between here and Nathan Hale Farms. The bottoms of the basins, stormwater basins, will also be vegetated, and landscaping, of course, will be added around the parking lot and the building. This next exhibit gets into the drainage, but before we get into that level of detail, I just want to go back to the site plans, and I'm going to scroll down to the site plan utility and grading sheet. And here you can see everything that's proposed. You can see all the flagged wetlands over here. You can see that dashed line, the 100-foot review area. Again, this area here with that line dash, that's part of the 100-foot review area. We're not doing anything in there other than some very, very minor grading along the edge, as you can see. But all that area will be left to return to a brush buffer, wooded buffer, whatever chooses to grow in there. But it will be essentially left in its natural state and allowed to regrow with no modification to it as part of this plan. Down in this corner of the site, this is where that brush line comes out. So there is a little bit of clearing in here. As you can see, very, very limited clearing. This little piece right here within the 100-foot review area. And the reason for that brush clearing is to get the outlet from the stormwater management basin in there, so it flows overland before it gets to the wetlands. And the only water that will leave this outlet from this basin and this outlet from this lower basin will be water that builds up to a certain depth and then is allowed to go to small openings in these outlet control structures. And so it meters the water out to decrease the peak rate of runoff and the stormwater volume, which we'll show you in the drainage summary soon. The details of this plan, here's the end of Woodrow Drive. We're proposing an access road up to the building. The building is located in the field approximately in this location. The main parking lot is L-shaped around the building. All of that, again, all of the roof, the building, the parking, and the stormwater management areas are all outside the 100. There is a wetland on this side as well, and a review area associated with that. And again, similar to the other side, we're completely out of that 100-foot review area. In any portion that's cultivated, again, that area will just be left for regrowth as a wooded and brush buffer. So the 72-car parking lot is here. The building, we have a septic system. There's no sanitary sewer. Up here, there is public water. So since there's no sewer, we do have a septic system. Instead of putting this lower than the parking lot, which would have been in the 100-foot buffer, we kept it under the parking lot, so it's beyond the 100-foot upland review area. For water, there are easements through here. For water, there is an existing main that comes from Woodrow Drive all the way up through the field up to Nathan Hale Farms. That results in us just having to tap in a very short distance with the water service at this location. So that provides water service. As far as power, there are those overhead lines that we just discussed before. There is a utility pole in this location, so the idea is to add a pole to get across the easement for the water main, and then once we get past that easement, to go underground to the building. The stormwater management basins, we have the main one here. So everything that flows off the parking lot, we do not have curbs, we do not have catch basins. Everything is overland flow. So sheet flow over the parking area, over a 2-foot wide crushed stone apron, which promotes infiltration and inhibits erosion, gets into a vegetated swale, which comes down. You can see the flow arrow here to this point. Very similar thing here off this edge of the pavement. This flows this way over the gravel edge. Again, no curbs or gutters. Overland flow to here, and this swale to here. So all of that water is brought directly down to the stormwater management basin via overland flow and sheet flow. So we're minimizing our point discharges as well, and promoting infiltration and promoting overland flow. So everything makes it to this basin from this upper area. Once we get too low on this road, then obviously we can't get water to flow uphill. So anything that's too low to make it into this basin drains again overland flow across the pavement, the sheet flow into a vegetated swale, which then gets right down into this stormwater quality basin. If this does fill up a certain amount, it's able to go into a catch basin grate outlet control structure, which meters the flow out. And then this is connected to the stormwater system on Woodrow Drive for overflow. As you'll see in the drainage report we'll bring up momentarily, all the peak rates of runoff from the 2 through the 100-year storm are less than existing conditions, and the runoff volumes from the site are also less than the existing condition. Although the regulations just require us to have peak rate of runoff lower, we were able to have the volumes be lower for the post-development condition as well. For water quality, we've already mentioned several of the LID, low impact development features that we've added. Just to quickly review those, we have overland flow, we have these gravel aprons along all the downstream edges of the parking lot to inhibit erosion, promote infiltration. That leads to a vegetated swale with check dams in here at certain intervals, just to slow any water down, even though the slopes are generally flat. Slow any water down, allow sediments to settle out, even prior to making it to the stormwater basin. Once this water gets into the stormwater basin, there's a sediment forebay. That's the shaded area on both of these. So any sediments that do make it to that point settle out in that location. And when that overtops, it's able to go over the vegetated area, the wet bottom basin. When the water level builds up, then it just trickles out through the outlets. This one in this direction and this one in this direction. This plan set that I'm going through was revised through Friday, November 13th, which is last Friday. We know there's public interest. We know that there's a lot to digest here. And we did just submit those updated plans based on feedback that we received at the field walk, at the site walk, and at our last meeting with this board. So generally, what changed on this plan is we reevaluated the drainage computations. This basin shrunk a bit, and we were able to keep these slopes, but we were able to pull this slope in a little bit further away from the buffer. And what that allowed us to do is to pull this discharge outlet away, further away from the wetland. That was a comment at our last meeting. Last time at our last meeting, this distance to this outfall was 59 feet. Now with this plan, it's 83 feet. So we've increased that by over 24 feet further outside, further away from the wetlands and through a natural brush buffer into a natural swale that currently brings runoff from the field down toward the wetland in that direction, so returning that flow direction. From the lower basin, there is an existing stormwater drainage system in Woodrow Drive. A portion of the field drains down to Woodrow Drive cul-de-sac right now. A lot of that flow that currently drains to Woodrow Drive is intercepted by this water quality basin to, again, knock down the peak rate of runoff and enhance the stormwater quality prior to putting it back into the town drainage system. One other piece that I want to show you is when you leave Woodrow Drive, we always have to look intersection sightline. And when you leave Woodrow Drive looking to the right, when Woodrow Drive was initially installed, it looked like they tried to do their best to achieve an appropriate sightline at the time. But with today's standards, there's a little bit of grading, less than a foot of grading that's needed in this area to see, and it's an existing condition, it's an existing intersection, but we're choosing to improve that sightline a little bit by cutting down this grade. We are limited to grading in the East Lyme Town right-of-way of North Brybrook Road. Just a little bit there. We are outside the 100-foot review area. Bride Brook comes down, crosses under North Bride Brook through this culvert, and we are more than 100 feet from that area of flagged wetlands on our property to that location. So I just wanted to point that out to the board as well. It's very, very limited in section. You could see the dashed line is the existing grade, and the dark solid line here is the proposed grade. The straight dark line is the line of sight, so you can see that we're just cutting that down over about a 60 foot distance, about 1 foot, just to improve that sight line a little bit more. We touched on a lot of the stormwater, and I just want to show you this plan. This drainage area map is included as part of the drainage analysis report that was submitted. Last month, Ms. Chantrell had a question on the soil type, and this was submitted last month too, and just revised since the basin got a little bit smaller and the drainage was modified a little bit, as we mentioned. This soils legend here, and I'll blow that up, that includes all the soils within the analyzed watershed. The majority of the site you could see is 61B, and the vast majority of the site is 84B, and then there's some 61B on site. 84B, if you go to the legend, you can see is a Paxton and Montauk fine sandy loam. And then the 61B is Canton and Charlton fine sandy loam. So we had that open question. I just wanted to show you that we took note of that, and I just wanted to bring that up to this meeting. So what these maps show, these are the red dash line are just the major drainage area down to North Brybrook Road, and then the lighter dash lines are the interior sub areas. All that together and analyzed gives us our drainage results, which are in the drainage report. This was one of your exhibits as well, the drainage report, updated to last Friday. And you could see that the bottom tables are accumulative from the whole entire site. And you can see the peak rate of runoff, they're all less than the pre-development condition. And the volume of runoff for existing and proposed conditions are all less as well. Water quality volume is included in here too. For the first upper stormwater basin, you could see that we're required to have 3,141 cubic feet of water to be stored for treatment. And we have 3,500 cubic feet in that first forebay of the top basin. The bottom one, we're required to have 436 and we have 500. So in both basins, we exceed the water quality volume. All the rest are just all the boring computational backup analysis. Next, we have, I believe that's everything going through all the plans. Tried to be as brief as possible. The drainage analysis summary. There is an exhibit in the list of exhibits. I believe it's E and K from the zoning department saying that they're just going to reserve comment since we have to go for a special permit through zoning. They're going to reserve their comments until then. And then we have this letter from Victor Benny, who's a town engineer. These comments are based on the original plans dated September 8th, 2020. And we'll just go through those quick. 1 and 2 are comments, specific comments. 3 through 6 are generally statements. 1 recommended reducing the pavement width from 24 to 22 feet. We thought this was a good idea. We thought that the town may have required 24 feet based on the required street widths. However, in a subsequent conversation with Victor Benny, we've agreed to go to 20 feet. So that reduces the overall impervious. The drainage already works, but it reduces the overall impervious area by a 4-foot strip along the length of that roadway. So we will be doing that with an updated map that we'll prepare before the December meeting, which we fully expect that this gets continued to. And number 2 was provide a level spreader at the downgrade edge of the proposed flared end with plunge pool originating from the proposed stormwater management basin. So going back to that one outfall that goes into the review area down to the wetlands, we have a stilling basin, essentially a level depressed stone outfall. So any water that does leave the basin is able to, again, for further polishing, stay there, get to 0 velocity. Any sediments that are in there settle out in that pool before it goes overland for that 83 feet prior to entering the nearest wetland. We've talked to him about that, about a width, an appropriate width, and he feels that 5 feet wide is appropriate. So on this next updated plan, we'll not only have the plunge pool, but we'll have a 5-foot wide riprap apron at the outlet of that too, per his request. 3, it just goes on to say that the ENS narrative of construction details provided are in compliance with the 2002 DEP guidelines. Number 4, he states that Bride Brook is listed with DEP as an impaired water body. The construction notes, erosion sedimentation control plan, stormwater management basin maintenance plan provide the appropriate guidance regarding the measures necessary to provide protection from the adverse impacts of stormwater runoff. 5, as indicated in the narrative, control measures and LID features have been incorporated into the drawing set to address stormwater quality. Furthermore, the project proposes restoring 2 previously cultivated areas in the upland review area with native shrubs and grasses. Last, number 6, East Lyme Engineering Department recommends that the Wetlands Agency consider an erosion sedimentation bond in the amount of $15,000 for the installation and maintenance of ENS controls. We'll review the number with Victor, but obviously we're not opposed to that. Any wetlands, larger scale project that comes through the Inland Wetlands Board, that's a standard process to have a bond up front. Just going back quickly to mention ENS, since Victor brought it up on that last comment. Just going to go back to the site plan, the grading plan, to show you what we did for ENS on this particular project. First of all, while we get into this, first of all, I want to mention that this is almost a 22-acre lot. And of those 22 acres, there's no more than 4 acres that we're disturbing to create the parking and the grading and the septic and the stormwater basins and the building. So more than 17 acres, I can say, more than 17 and a half acres will be preserved as it is today and undisturbed and untouched. So all the buffers to the wetlands and the wetlands themselves basically stay in the same state as they are today, barring any little, minor grading or stormwater outfall that we have already discussed in detail. For ENS, we do have, you can see there's silt fence, even if it's going against the grain of the lay of the land. Essentially, the stormwater or the grade goes from this area here, the highest point, down this way, almost directly west, toward the wetland and toward Woodrow Drive subdivision. So generally silt fence is provided on the downslope, but just as a visual barrier so that the contractor doesn't extend into the 100-foot buffer areas by accident. We have the silt fence as shown, so it protects all this buffer area. Over here, we do have a little bit of grading in here, and we have this dashed area that will be returned to natural. There is a gravel road that's a little hard to see in the field, but it is there. When they recently came in, Eversource recently came in to upgrade the power lines. They put in this gravel road for their trucks to access up to this pole here. So that gravel portion of road will stay there so that Eversource can access this particular pole. The rest will be under the proposed pavement surface. There are 2 soil stockpile areas up in this location, up in the higher areas. Both of them are outside of the 100-foot review area. And then in addition to that, any slopes greater than 3 to 1, we have bulldozer tracking, we have erosion control blankets. All these details are included in the plan set toward the end. Usually the details are the last couple of plan sheets, right along with the erosion control narrative. So we have our outlet structures and our berms and our catch basins and our vegetated swale. We have a stormwater management basin construction notes, maintenance plan. We have stormwater management basin plantings. Rich can discuss this quickly too. We have basically 50% wool sedge and 50% soft rush along the bottom of the basins, and then the slopes of the basin are a normal grass seed mix. That's also part of the plans. This final sheet here has all the soil erosion sedimentation control plan narrative that Victor mentioned in his letters, in his comments. And then we have the construction entrance detail. So there's stone there, so there's limited tracking of mud or soil off the site onto Woodrow Drive during construction. We have erosion control blankets on any slopes greater than equal to or greater than 3 to 1. Generally, the steepest slope we have on site is 2 to 1, and that's on the inside of the stormwater management basin. On the outside, it's 3 to 1. Silt fence and hay bale we have in certain areas, mostly downslope of the construction. Regular silt fence, as you can see here. The preformed scour hole at the one outlet that we have. That, as I just described, and this is where Victor would like that additional 5-foot level spreader at this location. And we also have stone check dams. So when the grass swales are formed, the check dams will, during construction before grass is established, they'll slow down the water and allow sediments to settle out. So with that, I think that covers everything I wanted to cover. I'm just going to, if you have any questions for Rich Snarsky, he is on this call, or if he wanted to say a few words, I could bring up his letter. Rich, did you want to say anything, or did you want to just see if there are any questions for you?
Is Rich on the call? Do you know?
He was, I saw him earlier. He's user, name user.
Okay, hold on.
There he is. Hey, Rich, you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
There you go, yes.
Oh, okay.
So I have your letter up on the screen, Rich, if you just wanted a quick overview, and then if there are any questions for you.
Well, this spring I did a vernal pool inventory of the whole property, the whole 20 acres, went through all the wetlands and the ponds and looked for amphibians. And the only vernal pool amphibians were breeding, found 5 spotted salamander eggs in that pond to the west of the proposed church. The pond doesn't dry up. It's not a vernal pool, but you know, the salamanders do breed in pools sometimes. They were laying their eggs along the border of where there's a cattail grown on the shallow portions of the pond. And they were in the southwest corner of the pond. And the other pond to the very south of the property on the right, when you come in, that did not have any amphibian breeding in there.
Rich also did the wetland delineation, so if you have any questions for Rich, you certainly feel free to ask him. I was just going back to our cover sheet on our plan set, since Rich mentioned 2 areas. So this darker gray hatch area, this is the existing pond that we walked out to during the site walk. The southwest corner where Rich found those egg masses are here, and you can see it's hundreds of feet away from the building and the parking lot. Fully protected, no changes around that at all. And as Rich mentioned, the pond does not dry up, so it may support a fish population. It's not confirmed, but it doesn't meet definition of a vernal pool since it doesn't dry up. It holds water all year long. The other pond that Rich mentioned is down here. He also did evaluate this and did not find any amphibian breeding in that pond. Also on the call is Pastor Randy Hyde from Harvest Christian Fellowship. And I know that he just wants to say a few words. He did last month, but of course now tonight opens the public hearing. So he would like to say a few words, and then we will open it up for questions.
Yes, I just want to thank the Wetlands Commission for the time they put into this, and say that we're very excited as a church to have this opportunity. We are looking to really give back to the community, especially in the day and age we're living in. We're finding that people are really hurting, and we're looking to really reach out to them. Our main service is on Sunday morning with a few smaller services here and there, way less people. All the other ministries will be off the property. We look to, to get into the community and to mix with the community and minister to them or help them in whatever way we can. So we look to, go outside of the property and do most of the ministry there. We're involved in various ministries and have been for over 20 years in East Lyme. And we believe this is going to be a way that we can increase our ability to minister and also just have a nice place to worship. We are looking to be very good neighbors. I've met all the neighbors there and just enjoy talking with them. And so we look to be as non-invasive as we can and to just, respect their privacy as well. So just want to thank you again for that opportunity, and our heart really is not in having a big campus or anything like that. It's really just to have a place that we could settle. We're right now in storage units up in Bride Brook near the convalescent home there, and so it's a little bit hard to worship there, and also to have others come that are prospective members or onlookers to come and worship. So we are just looking for a place to settle down finally after 20 years and worship. I want to thank everybody for that. And I think our heart has been right in that we wanted to make sure this was done right. And so that's why we hired Joe of Indigo Land. And we just are so impressed with the way this is done. It's non-invasive, and we're thankful for his leadership in this. I just want to thank everybody.
Thank you. So that concludes our presentation for the moment, and we're open for any questions that you may have.
Jen, could you bring us back? Maybe we should leave up the screen the way it is, so that any commission members might have, any commission members have any questions about the information? I know we all had it before the meeting, and we've seen it a little bit before. Are there any particular questions from anybody? That was easy.
Actually, I have a question.
There we go.
Can you explain to me the septic design? I'm not an expert in septic systems, but from what I understand is that you're not supposed to pave over them. So can you just describe the location, the selection for the location for the septic?
Yep, it's perfectly fine. Nothing in the health code prevents paving over. If you do pave over, what they ask you to do is also show a reserve area and prepare that reserve area just in case it ever needs to be used, which it very infrequently is. So what we show, I just scroll down to the septic plan, which is sheet, see if I can give you the sheet here. Sheet 5 of 10 is the septic system layout. So kept it close to the building. Again, far from the wetlands, outside the 100-foot review area. This main area here is the primary that serves the building. This shorter area here is a reserve, a code compliant reserve area. Now that area has to be prepped with the right sand in that area, so that if and when it ever needs to be utilized, that the pavement just needs to be cut, the sand is already there, the system's installed, and it can go that easily as is. We do commercial systems under parking lots for much larger developments than this very, very frequently, whether it's residential, commercial, churches, schools, whatever it might be. And there are no issues with that. The public health code does allow it. Again, they just have that special requirement that the reserve area has to be prepared ahead of time.
Mr. Wren, I have a question. It's Gary Upton. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Gary?
Good, thanks. I was, in looking this over myself, I was thinking, impervious surfaces, non-impervious surfaces, potential to make some that are non-impervious, impervious. And, I was going to bring that up in a little bit here. Would there be an adverse impact to the function of the septic system and or the septic system's, effluent that could potentially impact the wetland? If the portion that Ms. Chantrell brings up that's, quote unquote paved, where the septic system, if that were in a surface like a little crushed stone or some gravel, how would that impact the function of the septic is my question.
We also have commercial septic systems under gravel parking lots. They're under earth, under pervious type of pavements. And, it doesn't affect it any different than if it was in, not under an impervious, or if it was like in a grass area that's pervious that allows rainwater to infiltrate through the ground and through the septic system. So this system is code compliant. you could be within 100 feet of a drinking water reservoir with a septic system. So we're more than 100 feet. You can see this dimension up here. The closest that it gets to is 130 feet.
Could you pull us in a little closer?
Yes.
Thank you.
So here's the 100-foot upland review area. The closest corner here is 130, almost 131 feet. And you can see it swings away, almost, but it does swing away a little bit. So this end is further than 130 feet away. This is labeled and dimensioned at its closest point. So we could be 100, no, closer than 100 feet to a drinking water reservoir. We could be 75 feet to a potable water well. So we feel being 130 plus feet with a code compliant septic system that it more than protects the water quality.
Okay. So the function or effluent, any potential effluent, how would it be impacted if the surface was pervious?
As I mentioned before, I don't believe that it would be better or worse.
Okay. So it wouldn't bring it faster to groundwater if it was impervious, or it wouldn't bring it faster to groundwater if it was impervious, is what you're saying?
Not as compared to if it was just in a grass area. You know, we probably, to save the church some funds, we probably would have preferred to have it over in this area. But we chose this site to be outside of the 100-foot review area. So if the system was over here and it was under grass, it would receive, you know, the rainwater from the sky that would infiltrate through it. I don't believe that it would change that. I think having it the 130 feet rather than less than 100 feet is the biggest improvement that you can have.
Okay. And the system is rated based upon the use and the size of the building, right?
It's based on the number of seats in the building.
Okay.
The congregation.
What I was getting at is probably more efficient and oversized, more so than it would need to be, I would imagine.
Can you repeat that?
What I was alluding to with a church that potentially has 1, 2, 3 services a week, if they're lucky, from our past conversation with Pastor Randy, I think they'd like to have more services. I would imagine, in comparison to a full-service restaurant or something of this size that would be open all the time, this septic is much more capable of handling everything.
Yes. Yes. That's a very valid point. Generally, their largest mass is on Sunday morning.
Yep.
I think what they mentioned last time, and Pastor Randy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if they did in the future, the next 3, 4, 5 years, get more members added to their congregation, and they had 2 masses, then maybe a second mass would get added on Sunday. The other events that he was talking about are just really board members and so forth that might get together and be 5, 10, 15, 20. So your statement is correct that yes, it is designed for the maximum seating of 220, whatever that exact number is. So it is oversized, and it will only see any sort of flow on Sunday morning and be able to rest and dry over that whole next week before the next Sunday mass. Unlike a restaurant that you also brought up that constantly, heavy flow, and that's high strength wastewater that goes into a system each day. This is very, very low impact and spread out. It's a thinner system, but it's spread out over a long way for several reasons. But when you spread it out more, it's better for the groundwater.
Now, on the subject of food matters, I do know some churches that have full commercial kitchens. Is there anything that's going to be requested in this?
I believe there is. I'll let Pastor Randy or Scott Long answer that, but I believe that there is a potential for a kitchen facility in this building, correct? Scott, Pastor Randy?
Yes, this is Scott Long. Excuse me. There is a plan for a basic kitchen, just like you would find in your home, attached to the fellowship hall on the left side of the building. Standard sink, stove, the basics, just to be able to preheat or reheat any food that we're going to be serving among ourselves.
So not a commercial kitchen, just a small standard residential kitchen.
Correct.
Thank you very much. So it's an understanding it's not a commercial kitchen. And then how about extra parking? Let's just say these guys get this new church and everything goes great. And, I think, what is it, 73 parking spots? 72. And they're gangbusters and they're so blessed and they're so happy and they say, oh, guys, we need an extra 20 spots. Is there any provision space for that?
What we base this on is currently, I believe their congregation is about 70 members, correct, Pastor Randy or Scott? 70.
Currently, we have between 80 and 90 show up, or prior to COVID and being able to meet in person, we had 80 or 90.
Okay, and probably 2 or 3 come per car, correct?
Correct. I believe we fill about 35 parking spaces now.
So this provides a larger building for growth and a larger parking lot for growth for the foreseeable future.
Right.
There's no plans for expanded parking in the next several years. And if there is, obviously, with what you passed earlier this evening, anything that happens on this property will come back to the board for review.
I was just thinking positive for them. I'm hoping they get, they have a nice full church.
Thank you.
So, do any other commission members have any thoughts? I have a few other questions I wanted to direct back to potentially Mr. Gaishel. Anyone else have anything they want to jump in?
So my name is Jimmy. I'm a property owner of 17 Nathan Hill Drive and 15 Nathan Hill Drive.
Hi, Jimmy. Could you hold on 1 minute? Before I'm presuming that you want to say something during the public section of the meeting, right, Jimmy?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. We're going to open that up in a minute. And I know I mixed things up earlier myself. We've had a long-standing matter we were dealing with, and I was a little out of sorts. So we're just going to let Mr. Wren finish his presentation. Our commission's going to ask him a couple more questions if they have any, and then we want to hear from people like yourself. So I think I don't see Jen Lindo, but she'll tap you right in a minute if you don't mind, sir.
No problem.
Thanks. It is Jimmy, right?
That's correct.
Thank you. So, Kristen, you have anything on this?
No, not currently.
Okay. Jen, could you put us back to maybe get rid of this full screen view? Hopefully we won't need it again. If we do, we can come back, right?
Joe, can you shut that off?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, commission members, anyone else have any nitty-gritty requests, questions? So, Mr. Gaishel, I have a question for you, sir. What's stopping this from being a church? And I know the other way to ask it, but I'm just going to ask it the straight way. What's stopping this from being a church one day and turning into a Ruby Tuesdays?
The zoning approval?
Okay. But the zone would allow it, right? It could essentially turn to a restaurant?
No, it's an RU40 zone.
Great. That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you, sir. So, just considering the potential zone use and all that, a church is, as we know, a special use, but it's not, right? I mean, it's not a special.
But it's not the agency's discretion on the use. We're looking at the proposed regulated activities, which is some grading in the 100-foot upland review area.
Understood, but what I'm alluding to.
Yeah, you're correct. The use wouldn't be a zoning-driven thing. It's RU40.
Right. My concern would be a future potential impact when looking at the application. That's all. So it sounds like it would be hard for them to turn their church into a Ruby Tuesday. It was the simple answer, right? All right. So if the fellow commission members don't have any other questions and Mr. Wren doesn't have anything else in the presentation, it would be this time that we would want to open up the public hearing portion of this meeting. If that's okay with everyone else involved, Ms. Lindo, we're going to kick it to you to be the MC.
Okay, I normally would hope to get a chat from people if they wanted to speak, so I haven't. I'm just going to go one by one and give people that option. There are, I will have to tell you, 35 people in this meeting right now, so please be patient and know I will get to you as soon as I can. I think it was Jimmy. I'm going to let you go first. If you could just give your name and your address for the recording secretary. You have to unmute yourself, though.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Patel, and the address is 15 Nathan Hill Drive, East Lyme, obviously.
Hi, Jimmy. Hello again.
Hello, everyone.
Where are you? I can't see you. Are you maybe?
I'm second to Jenny, I guess.
Everybody's different on everybody's screen. So.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Look at the arrows on the side, and you might have to scroll to them, or you can click on speaker view up in the corner.
Thanks, Dave. All right, Jimmy, go for it. We're listening.
All right. Yeah, my concern is since it is a residential area, and I guess Gary asked that question, will it be ever converted into commercial property? And the answer we got is no at this point. Right now, how many story will this building be? Or how tall or how high?
We're gonna, Mr. Wren, we'll get some of these questions and bring them back to you after this section. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a non-wetland related item. I think we can cover that at the zoning special meeting.
Exactly. So, Mr. Patel, while this starts here, there's many other layers to this, and as you are engaged and interested in what's going on, I recommend that you're at planning and zoning and all of those pieces. Like Mr. Gaishel said to me when I asked about a Ruby Tuesday, it's not really what we're here for. We're looking to protect the wetland and, as such, focus on that.
Okay.
So, did you have any other questions or concerns?
Regarding wetland, at this point, no.
Okay. And we don't say that just to silence you. Please understand. We get as much silencing on our end as you do. You can.
No, I completely understand. This is new to me. I never attended this type of meeting, so but there's always a first, right?
Jimmy, this is Joe Wren too. There will be a special permit needed for zoning, so you will most likely get a notice for that meeting as well, and you can come and speak at that meeting.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wren. And I think you did a fine job for your first meeting. It's, and it's Zoom too. It's the worst. Thank you very much. And if you hang out and there's another question you have when we're done, we'll go back to you.
Sure.
All right, Jen.
I have an Ann Berkovich.
It's Doug Butkovich. It's under
Okay,
my
Doug,
wife's
okay.
Amy. It's Amy. So I have several questions.
Okay, can you just give us your address first?
Yep, sure. That's Doug Butkovich, 2 Woodrow Drive. I'm right on the corner of Woodrow and Bridebrook on the western edge, I guess, of this property.
Yep.
First one's a comment, basically under the project narrative. It talks about the majority of the land was used for crop farming and cultivation for many years. I believe this is false because, first of all, the lot is 21 plus acres and over 12 of it, so over half of the lot is wetlands. It was never cultivated as farmland. And I've been here 17 years and it's only been farmed for about 2 summers. So to go off the basis that this is active farmland that's being repurposed, I think is a false narrative to put forward. Along the same lines, under that project narrative, talks about There will be 72-car paved parking lot. I know we talked about that with the septic system and potential growth, but the church is set up for 226 seats. At 226 seats, you're still, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say you're going to get 2 people per car. Maybe worst case. That still doesn't account for enough parking spaces to accommodate all the members that could be in the church at one time. Overflow, I would expect to be on Woodrow. I would probably estimate maybe 40 cars could be on Woodrow and take up the entire road and not leave any room really to maneuver down the street. And then once you go from there, if you start parking off of the paved areas, you start potentially impacting the wetlands, because you'll start disrupting mud, start picking up debris that could carry into this wetland area, either on this property or right on Bride Brook itself. And I didn't know if there was any provisions for that to look at the impact. I know even with growth that everybody likes to have and wants to have. And I don't know if I should wait for answers or just put these questions out there for review and response later. And then the other one about the parking lot right now for this piece is there's no curbing. And I'd like to know how you plan on maintaining, if any vehicles have any leaks, any fuel leaks or oil leaks, how you're going to prevent that with no curbing from going into the wetlands, being that it's already an impaired water system.
Thanks, Doug. Do you have anything else you'd like to add or ask?
I got about 2.5 pages, yeah.
Okay.
You want me to keep going, I'll keep asking.
Yeah, and if you do have something written up, you can send it to Miss Linda. We can't enter it now, but we could put it in the record probably at a later time, presuming we would continue this public hearing this evening.
Yeah, I can forward it to somebody's email later or to Mr. Gaishel.
Yeah.
So it talks about what one of the questions I have is what's going to be implemented to reduce the peak runoff rates, because I see all the paperwork says that it's going to reduce the runoff rates. I have video from October of last year where I have about 8 inches of standing and flowing water at a good rate through my yard in this current setup. And it shows my neighbor's yard at 4 Woodrow, and we tend to have a lot of water runoff, which I'm sure when Nathaniel Hale Drive was put in, that was impacted as having zero impact. But the people I bought the house from and the neighbors that have been here longer than me said that they never had that kind of runoff back here. And now I do. And it literally goes through my yard to get to the brook. I would definitely like to give those pictures and or video for review. And I looking at the runoff with this also is a majority of the runoff from the parking lot will go to the holding pond, which once it gets to a certain level will flow back to the wetlands. It shows it's going to reduce the flow, but again, like I said, with what I've seen and observed in the 17 years I've been here, and it happens when there's any decent rain, I could kayak in my backyard. So I'm dealing with that, and I can't handle any more. And I know that the reports also said that it would increase on my side of the street. On the west side, I would increase slightly, but it would increase, and I'm really not accepting any increase in runoff. And then it also stated in here, it talks about enhancing the water quality. Currently, there's no activity up there at all. There's no farming. There's no activity, no traffic other than the gravel road that was put in last year when Northeast Utilities or Eversource upgraded the power lines. There's no off-road vehicles. There's no mountain biking, hiking, anything that goes on the road. And I'd like to know how you're going to put 72 vehicles up there and say there's zero impact to water quality. It's actually going to get better. A few other points moving on is we're talking about some of the water flow about pooling in my yard on the main road. I take it upon myself to clean out the storm drains at the end of the road where the stop sign is, to keep the snow away from it and the leaves out of it. And currently, the way the system is and the way it drains down the road, it cannot handle what comes down Bride Brook already. And we're proposing putting all the runoff from the parking, a lot of the runoff from the parking lots and the roadway into that same system that can't really handle what's there. There's generally ice down there in the wintertime because a pool forms. And in the summertime, when it rains or when it's non-freezing, when it's not freezing out, it'll end up with quite a large puddle down there. And I don't see how any of this is going to make that any better without tearing up the entire road and restructuring the entire drain system. When you go to document number 3, I was kind of looking at, there's zero vegetation that I saw from your plans that are proposed for the Woodrow side. We're getting the largest impact from this as far as access from our road, which is a quiet, attractive little 6-house neighborhood where my daughter can go to the end of the road and ride her bicycle around without fear of severe traffic. And that's going to be impacted a lot. So now, there's no vegetation on this side. On the Nathaniel Hale side, I see a large evergreen suggested, natural vegetation or natural barrier that's being put up. But I don't see anything on the, anything substantial that would block any obscure views of the structure itself from Woodrow. I don't know if you got, I got a couple more comments or questions. So Bride Brook, the brook itself is listed on the impaired waterways for East Lyme in the state of Connecticut. And it talks in, how are we going to ensure that I see that during construction, you put what you're going to do to not damage the quality of the water, but what are we doing going forward to not impact it? You talked about salamanders. I've had snapping turtles in my yard, I've had frogs in my yard, and I've had salamanders in my yard, all from this brook and this wetland area. I know you didn't find that when you went to the pond, but I have photos of these. Know the snapping turtle, at least I have photos of from when I first moved in and later, and pictures of salamanders in my yard. And then the last couple is, I want to know how we're going to control runoff onto my property specifically. I'm very concerned about that. Thankfully, thank God right now, I don't get water in my house. But if I get I get water around my above ground pool on all sides of my above ground pool when it rains heavy, currently in the situation. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it's added to that. And then the drainage report also states that runoff onto my property will increase, and that's just not acceptable to me. I know that's a lot of stuff, and I appreciate you letting me speak, and I will get copies of this to whoever I need to. I can type it up and email it, and I'd like to email the pictures and videos too, to whoever would like to see them.
Yeah, you can send it to Jennifer Lindo. Jen, you want to tell them your email real quick?
Sure. My email is jlindo@eltownhall.com.
So j.lindo.
There's no dot. It's just J Lindo.
Okay, J Lindo. Thank you.
Yep.
jlindo@eltownhall.com.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thanks for your questions and concerns. I'm sure, Mr. Wren and also the applicants probably presuming they care about some of those comments. I think for efficiency, we should keep carrying through and allow Mr. Wren at the conclusion of these questions and comments to speak after we're done with all of the comments from the public. That makes sense. That's how we've done it in the past, right, guys? So shall we just carry on running down the list? And again, thank you, Doug. We appreciate it.
Okay. I have Kelsey Janis.
Hi, guys. My name is Kelsey Janis. My parents live at 5 Woodrow Drive. They're Mike and Cheryl Wisniewski. I live personally on 15 Stonywood in Niantic, Connecticut. And I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I guess I agree with Doug about the vegetation. I'd be curious to see how that would be incorporated to add on the Woodrow side. I'm also a little curious, I think this will come up in zoning, but just a heads up for lighting and what that's going to look like for the parking. I'm a little worried about headlights, so that kind of goes back to the vegetation. So I think those are my kind of couple comments I had. I also am a little curious about learning a little bit more about how you're going to handle the sight line at the end of the road. I know you mentioned looking right at the stop sign. I know looking left at the stop sign is also a little bit difficult depending on the season. So I'd be interested to see that kind of explored or information on that. So yeah, I think that's it.
Kelsey, that'll be, not to answer the questions, but that'll be more of a planning and zoning matter. Again, this isn't me trying to give you some soft answer, but we're really here to try and focus on the potential impacts on the wetlands from the building, so on and so forth.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much for saying something.
Okay. I have Karen Urban. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
You did.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Karen Urban. I live at 1 Woodrow Drive, right on the end of North Brybrook and Woodrow. I appreciate the investment that's been made to really explore making sure that the landscape is treated correctly. I'm not entirely sure that the same effort's been placed on the humans that currently live there in that environment, and I'd like to break down some numbers pretty quick. When I look at Exhibit B, page 5 of 8, it talks about the worship area being 226 people capacity. When you look at the other pieces of that building, you have a 100 seat room for social events. You have 2 offices that house 3 people, so that's 6 more. There's 4 classrooms that hold 12 people apiece, that's 48 more people, and 1 classroom that holds 10. So that's a total of 390 seats in that building. So it's hard for me to understand that most of the practices and time will be spent outside of a facility that's built to hold 390 people. I'm not sure why that investment would be made not to utilize that space. I'd also like to go back to that question of a commercial kitchen. When there's the social event area made to hold 100 people and an event space that has that capacity, how the intention is to meet the needs of those folks with a non-commercial kitchen. Moving forward, when you look at the parking spaces, I think there's been some conversation there. But even if you looked at the worship area space at a 50% capacity, so 113 people, I think you had mentioned there's about 35 cars-ish coming and going. That's a 70 bi-directional traffic pattern going up and down this road. Sunday, between the hours of your worship time, we had 9 cars. That's about a 350% increase in traffic pattern. I noticed you mentioned in the last meeting that you also had, and today as well, 1 day per week heavier events and only a few scattered throughout the week. When you look at your website, it looks like you have about 5 days of programming with 1 to 2 offerings per day. And looking back into pre-COVID times, which I hope we return to very soon, you have that same program increased 5 days per week, sometimes 2 to 3 per day, including a vacation Bible school offering, which I would assume would have more traffic back and forth with parents bringing and dropping off their children. The comment made regarding the non-invasive goal of this project is a little concerning to me because I'm not entirely sure who this is non-invasive to. It was mentioned that this would be a great site for healing, which I have to say I completely agree with, which is why we purchased our home here on this small, quiet cul-de-sac, to Doug's point, where our children can ride their bikes and not worry about traffic. I also have concerns about our ability to get in and out of our driveway or an emergency vehicle to respond to our driveway during the times of start and end of the services that are going to be in that area. There are a number of things that were explored to make sure that the landscape and the wetlands were protected in this project. I'm asking that the impact to the people in this neighborhood be explored in exactly the same manner. I know you mentioned, Pastor Hyde, that you had met with the folks in the neighborhood. We have not met, and you have not met my husband as well. I'm happy to share my email with you so we can make a connection, so we can discuss this further. But I'm having a hard time digesting the fact that this project was thought to increase community and bring people together when it's clearly bringing a neighborhood together to talk about how it's going to poorly impact it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay. I have a user here that says 517091. Not sure what your name is.
It's me, right?
Yep, that's you.
Yeah, that's Eve. Yes, I have lots of questions to this project.
What is your name?
My name is Eve Su. I live in 6 Woodrow Drive with my husband, Stephen.
Thanks, Eve.
Yeah, hi. So regarding the wetland, that question, so okay, at this moment, when have a storm, a big storm, we observe in our parking, in our yard already had the water accumulated, by the driveway. So that's the lower end. So when they have a big storm, we already have water accumulate in over there. Okay. When Joe talking about that, the plan, so he say the water will go to the basin, right? The higher one, the lower one, and then will flow into the town system. Okay. Unfortunately, I lived there for more than 12 years here, and then the water will come into my house if there's a water. Since my yard is lower, so the water will come into my yard, to my home, instead of go to the town system. So right now, even though without any building, without any church, right, in the big storm, I already have the water accumulate in my yard, that one in my driveway, that side already. So that's, by listening to Joe's presentation, that's raised this question. I never think about that before. But when he talked about the water, how the water flow, I'm in the lower side of compared to the church, the location. So the water will come into my yard, come into my house. Okay, that's my concern. And then the other ones are talking about Joe didn't, share our neighborhoods impact, right? And then there's our driveway that's just immediately to connect to the church entrance. Okay? There's no any room to separate them. So there's only one entrance to the church. And I'm really concerned my family's safety. Okay, we're talking about how many hundreds of people coming, right? The driveway only had one driveway for this public building, okay? And then just next to my driveway, I'm really concerned my family's safety, okay? I never met with the Randy or before talking about my concern, but right now I really bring up this concern. We are brought our house in the QT set, right? We can have a walk, we have bike, our children run in here. But right now we're talking about how many cars driving and then next to my driveway. So that's a safety concern to my family, to my neighbor. I don't know when Joe, when you plan this, do you consider how impact our life in here? And that's I bring these two questions first in this meeting. I do have other about how impact our home value, right? And then why we building this church in this RU40 zone. I don't understand why we have that. And then this project will impact our life tremendously.
Do you have anything else for us? Sorry, did you freeze?
Yeah.
Oh, there you
yeah.
are.
Yeah. I have.
There was a connection problem. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, and also all our neighborhood we use well water, right? So that's our water resources. So with these cars coming to that lands, right? Have the oil, have all these things. So I don't know how to impact our waters the one we use daily. So that's a big concern. We don't use a public water. We use well water. So I don't know how big impact to our daily life in here.
And that would be probably one of the bigger things we can listen to you talk about. We, thank you for many of your comments. Again, like other attendees, there are many zoning and planning matters there that you can follow this application along and go and, we encourage you to continue to voice those opinions. It's not that we're not listening to them. We are just not able to listen or do anything about those particular pieces.
Yes, and so thanks for this opportunity. Actually, I learned a lot. This is my very first in those meeting or this subject, right? We live in this very cold, very quiet, right, residential area. We don't have everybody in here. We get along well. It's a very good life, and so all of a sudden, this project change our life totally, right? Yeah, the water may be coming to my house, and then I run into hundreds of cars. They rush to the church in the last minute, and my driveway is there. So I don't know when Joe, have this plan. Do you have any concern about the safety, how to impact the residential in here? You talk about the wetland, right? You talk about the church, but I did not think you mentioned one word about our community, our residential in here, right? People live in here, right? Like my neighbor said, right? We are here, we live in here, right? But when you have this plan, you're supposed to consider our life as well. What's the impact to our life?
Again, we hear what you're saying and we can agree or disagree. I have to be careful what I say, but bring that forth to the zoning and planning meetings that will be about this particular matter. We did hear your concern. We did hear your concern about the water impact. And is there anything else that you think would pertain to the water that we could comment on? If there's not, we'll move on to the next person. I'm sure Mr. Wren's going to have some comments at the end, but we do want to get through everyone tonight.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
This is Steven, and she's my wife, and I just have one addition. And we went to the town hall this afternoon, and we got a copy of the zone regulation and something like that. And then that piece paper and said that the church is not allowed to build in that land. And then why just have the church built up in that land? And because the piece of paper, we distributed that paper to our neighborhood. And then so just to say that we cannot have the church to build that one because the zone policy or zone regulation does not allow to do that. I don't know how you explain this, because we got a copy of the paper from town hall. And town hall, the paper said that some facility can be built and some cannot be built, just special permission and to build, but church is not included.
Yeah, when we bought our property more than 12 years ago, that land is designed, a plan to build a larger house from the
single family house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that land. Okay. But now it's a change the use, change the purpose of the land.
Understood. And guys, we hear what you're saying. We have to focus on the wetland matters, and if you have any other things that are wetland related, please bring them forth. If not, we do have to move on to the next person.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
That's not that I don't care or the commission doesn't care. We need to keep it focused on what's within our purview.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
Hold on. We have Stephen Wolf.
Yeah, hi, this is Steve Wolf. I live at 19 Nathan Hale Drive.
Oh.
I had a couple of questions / comments that just, listening to everyone and other things. So there's a lot of traffic from cars. So I guess my question or one of the concerns I might have is what is the impact on the environment and the surrounding wetlands from the exhaust from those cars? You're adding a significant number of cars 7 days a week in and out. So it would seem like you're significantly increasing, the amount of exhaust that you have from cars. And if they're holding, outside services under current conditions and maybe even future conditions, are people idling their cars in the parking lot while they hold an outdoor service? I know a lot of churches are doing that these days. As a second point, if the number of people that's been brought up somewhat throughout this that could attend, you're talking about hundreds of people. So, to me, that's got to add to a lot of foot traffic. If people stay in the parking lot in the church, great, but to think they're not going to go down by the pond and stuff as part of this structure being there. So, you're adding hundreds of people of foot traffic. I think that's going to have a significant environmental impact. If 100 and 200 people go to a pond that's currently visited by, one or two once in a blue moon. And then, the last question I had, it has to do with revenue for upkeep. Obviously, if this is a single family house, it's a small structure, they have a mortgage. So, the church in question gets their building loan. And, it's a very detailed plan about how it would protect the wetlands. My question would be, long term, what happens if the revenue stream from the church falters and they can't upkeep the property? If, all these features that they put in place to protect the environment, the septic system underneath the pavement, it's an industrial system, but you put a ton of cars over it over time, if it needs maintenance and there isn't funding, what happens then? Are there any protections in place to, continue maintenance and upkeep the property over time so that, it may be fine on day one, but what's it look like 5-10 years down the road? That's all the questions I had.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I have a Tyler and Heather Cipriani.
That is close enough. Hi, I'm Tyler Cipriani. I'm probably the newest one here. I'm at 269 North Bridebrook Road. I think I'm replacing the Lombardos that were previously there and which are still listed on the plans. But I just had a couple of technical questions, and I'm not really sure who can answer them. I know that I don't really know what the term was, but for looking at the animals, they were obviously picking out the salamanders there. Technically speaking, what counts as wetland animals, and why were those the only things found? Because, like many other people, there is a lot more wildlife in there than just salamanders. Larger animals, and not just these small things. So I'm just curious as to what is really truly defined as animals and why those are the only things picked up. Obviously, you go there for just one day, you're probably going to find a couple of things. But and actually, no, my other question was already answered. I guess I do have a question about how the water drainage calculations are made in terms of whether the lot is filled with cars. So now you've actually decreased the amount of square footage of available land. So you're going to have now a higher level of water, faster moving water to offset that, and how that's actually calculated. Or if that was just supplying all the addendums on the edge at the end of all the information. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go through. I haven't heard from anybody else in the chat feature, but I just want to check with a few people. Urban. I have a Dave and Pam. Did you want to say anything, Dave?
No, I don't have any comments right now. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a Robert. Robert, did you have anything? Okay, I'm not getting a response. Okay, then I have a Greg.
No, no questions at this time.
Okay. Robert's iPhone?
No comments.
Then I have a Sarah Klein.
Oh, yes, XIAO, that's my name.
Oh,
Is it right?
okay.
Yeah, I just to say it because my wife already did say
Okay.
some topics. So we just concern the safety, concern our privacy, and then we have a lot of concerns. And then there's the yeah, and no other comments. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I do
Yes,
believe
this is
that.
Greg Klein, the husband of Sarah Klein, whose computer this is, and I
Yeah.
don't have any comments at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
And then I do have a message that I think it was Doug. You had another comment or another question?
I do. I was just kind of monopolized some time earlier, so I have another the plan of conservation and development from 2020 for the town of East Lyme, October 7th, 2020. It's a draft, but it talks about actually, Bride Brook and Latimer Brook both supporting adronomous fish runs about some certain species that go to Bride Lake. It has one of the largest spawning populations of owlwife in New England. And I know that this feeds that. So the brook, the wetlands we're discussing, the pond feed to Bride Lake, which feed to Bride Marsh. And how are we going to ensure that this project is not going to affect that spawning population, which is the largest in New England?
Chat.
Thank you, Doug.
Cheryl, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
Hi, my name is Michael Wisniewski on Cheryl's computer, 5 Woodrow Drive.
We can hear you, Michael. How are
Yes. Good. How are you? I've been living down here for 28 years, 29 years, almost 30 on 5 Woodrow. And I've been through a lot of flash flooding, you want to call it. The pond just north of me on the east side of the property would flood over in the springtime, wintertime when we have heavy rains. And the Woodrow Drive would look like you could put a boat in it. They would actually block off at North Briarbrook so nobody can get through. And I actually had to buy a bigger vehicle, a taller vehicle, so I can get through, because I worked on the industrial park. Not just that, that's one comment. The other comment is the lake behind me flows into my backyard. And I got a special permit many years ago to put a nursery type thing in between the two. There's a back stream that empties down to North Briarbrook, and there's a little culvert that's behind my property. So I went to the wetlands inlet people, because they said I needed a permit just to clear the land so I can get a nursery back there. Just a small one, 12 by 12 garden, nothing big. And then they're like, well, you can't, you need to have a tube to go through, and you need to have gravel, you need to have this, and you only could go 10 feet wide. I got the permit and everything. They gave me the permit, I did everything. But still, it floods. I get in the spring and the fall, the water just gushes over my front lawn. It's just 4 to 5 inches. And now, a few years ago, when Eversource came through and put in the gravel road so they can fix the thing, the power lines, there's even more water coming down on this side of the gravel because they blocked off the drainage that was going to the middle. It's just one thing right after the other. And then if we get more water coming down on this side
it's going to fill up that pond faster, and it's going to end up coming down more on my side of the stream.
They already have a basement too.
And now we have, well, before that, maybe like 5 years after we bought the place, brand new, the water came up from underground and went into the basement. So now we had to put a sump pump in, and we had to maintain the sump pump. And the water level, I put a garage on about 20 years ago, and you dig down around here about 7 feet, and there's water gushing, even though my well is 150 feet deep. But you dig down 6 feet, 7 feet for the foundation, you know, it's all water. But then you want more water to come down because you're going to put a driveway in. And if the driveway doesn't have any sides on it, then the water's just going to keep coming off the sides. Even though they have, your engineer was talking about having gravel on the side of the parking lots to divert the water. I understand all that. I'm a designer. I design airplane stuff. So I know how engineering works. I just want to throw a comment out there that, you know, there's more than enough water that keeps coming down here. And it's not a 100-year flood. It's not a 200-year flood. It's like every 10, 7, 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think that might be it.
Can I add one comment?
Sure.
Yeah, so
Please introduce yourself again.
yeah, this is Eve. I just follow my neighbor's comment, because after they have the gravel road built to fix the electricity posts, and we found more water in our yard because they lift up the road, and then we have more water in the yard for both of us, because we are number 5 and number 6 there. So it's much more water.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comment from the public that might not have spoken yet? Is there anyone, Jen, you're seeing that? Please, by all means, there's a way to raise your hand. If you hover over your thing, you can click raise your hand. Even if you just want to, at this point, if someone wants to try and unmute themselves and say something, if you haven't spoken, please do, by all means.
I don't think so. I think that was everybody.
All right. At this point, I suppose we could conclude this portion of the public hearing if there isn't anyone else that wants to say anything. Do my fellow commissioners agree?
You mean close it entirely or just close it for the evening?
Yeah, I would say based on the feedback from the public, perhaps some of these questions need bigger answers.
Yeah, I suppose we could let Mr. Wren give us his spiel. I don't mean that with any disrespect, just as a phrase of speaking.
I believe Mr. Wren also mentioned that he was going to request a continuation to December.
Okay.
I thought I heard hearing him say that previously.
He wants to keep it open. Okay. Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we would like to keep it open. We have those updated plans and drainage report that we submitted on Friday in response to your previous comments and so forth. So we fully expect that it'll be continued to December meeting. But just I would like to go through and rebut everything that was brought up by the public. There was a lot of overlap, and there were a lot of items that pertain to zoning as far as traffic and safety and sightline and so forth. So I would like to go through those that pertain to wetlands, just in case there are any more questions from the commission or for the public, so that we can prepare for the December meeting. So the first thing I wanted to do, Jen, could I share my screen again?
Yep.
We have a A2 survey map of the property, and what I would like to do is just, for the commission's knowledge, we get names and we get addresses, but just to put everything in perspective, I would just like to show you, everyone can see this map, I presume? Yes.
Yes, I believe I can certainly see it, so I'm thinking everyone else can.
Okay. So I just want to go around. We had 7 people or 7 properties represented from 7 properties speak. And I just want to just zoom around this really quickly and show you. So Jimmy Patel up here off of Nathan Hale Drive, which is up to the northeast of the site. Patel is in that location. While we were right next door, Steve Wolf spoke. He's right next door to Patel's property. Again, northeast and uphill of the property. Bukovich is off of Woodrow Drive, I believe number 2, and they are right here, close to the cross culvert with the catch basins that goes underneath North Brydebrook Road. Kelsey Janice and Michael Wisniewski. Kelsey is his daughter, and they live at this location. Michael does. Karen Urban, I believe the address is 1 Woodrow Drive, so I presume that the property changed hands and it was Vincent DeCipio previously. That's at that location on the opposite side of Woodrow Drive. I can't pronounce, I apologize, Yi Su, I assume. And they live at 6 Woodrow Drive, and this is their location. We already mentioned Steve Wolf, and then Cipriani, 269 North Brydebrook. Here's North Brydebrook Road. As he mentioned, as Tyler mentioned, they purchased the Lombardo property, so that's this piece here on the opposite side of Brydebrook and the wetlands from the development. So that's just to put everything in perspective. Going back to the site plan quickly. As far as Jimmy Patel's comments, those are based on the use and the height of the building, and as we mentioned, those pertain to zoning. So I'll move on to the second item, or second person that spoke, who is Doug Bukovich. He had the most comments, and some of those overlap others. So I'll just go through those quickly. We did show this exhibit that's coming up now. His first comment was about the site being crops and cultivated. You could see 86 years ago, and obviously it was established, so it was probably before 86 years ago, this entire area was cultivated. And you can see Woodrow Drive, you can kind of see the same shape, and you can kind of make out up here with the power lines going through, you can kind of see the same shape as it exists today. Yes, since the church purchased the property, I believe someone did lease the land and do crops for a couple of years, but the last couple has not been cultivated, but all the rows and mounds and residue and stuff is still out there, very easy to discern if you walk through. It's just a farmer no longer owns it, the church owns the property. Next, parking and zoning, as far as having adequate parking, as part of our site plan going through, the parking ratio required by the town zoning regulations, and I'll get back to that site plan in a moment. The town zoning regulations require a ratio of 5 to 1 for a church for seats to parking spaces. We felt that having 5 to 1, we'd be in the 40s, somewhere around 45, 46 parking spaces. We felt that that was, since they have a congregation, of what Mr. Long said earlier, of 80 to 90, we felt that was light in itself. So we went to a parking ratio closer to 3 to 1, which we felt was more appropriate. And it's not completely 3-to-1, but it's close to 3-to-1, and it's improved over the 5-to-1 minimum that's required by the town zoning regulation. As you can see on the site plan, we have that included on note 5. Off-street parking required for a church is 226 seats, 5 spaces per seat, which brings you to 46. We have 72. We feel that we're more than adequately parked on the site. There will be, I'm sure through zoning, I'm sure there will be requirements, and I'm sure the church would never do that. Pastor Randy and Scott can speak to that they would never park anyone on Woodrow Drive. As you heard directly from them, they want to be a good neighbor, not a bad neighbor, and that would be a zoning violation. As far as no curbing, I'm going to go to the next sheet that shows more of the grading. We minimize the use of curbs for a water quality thing to enhance overland flow. So we've done this very successfully in plenty of other sites. If you have curbs, you have to have catch basins, and whenever you have a structural drainage infrastructure that reduces the amount of travel time that the stormwater has over vegetation and reduces its stormwater quality. So instead of having your traditional catch basins in the corners and pipes that just take whatever comes off the parking lot directly into a treatment area, what is done here, the drainage runoff goes over the parking lot, over a crushed stone swale. Some of that flow will infiltrate into the soil below. It's below the topsoil, the crushed stone. If it makes it over that, then it goes into this long flat swale with check dams. So each one of these C-shaped items is a check dam. So the water can get into the swale, and those check dams slow the flow in the swale, which has, I believe, a 1% gradient to begin with, so very flat gradient. So it goes hundreds of feet before it meets up with this other swale, and then continues even after it combines there into another swale with another check dam before it even makes it into the stormwater management basin. Once it makes it into the stormwater management basin, there's some stone here just to inhibit any erosion that may or may not occur, and then into this sediment forebay, which holds the water quality volume for the whole site and the roof that comes into it at this point. So if any sediment does make it through the swale and the check dams, it's taken out by this water quality volume pool here prior to making it to the bulk of the stormwater management basin. This water in here has to fill up within this basin a certain amount before it gets to a low flow conduit, and the low flow conduit in this basin is a 3/4 inch conduit. So it's kind of like a garden hose. A very small amount of water can make it through that. And the reason why that is so small is to control and meter that stormwater flow out. If it gets higher than that outlet, there's another rectangular outlet. We have details in the plans. They're generally like 3 inches by 12 inches or 3 inch by 14 inches. And unless you have a monumental storm, that is the only way that water can leave this basin. If it gets up to like a 100-year event, it is able to flow in the open grate on the top here. Very unlikely that would ever happen. If it did happen, it can go into the grate and into this pipe. But as the drainage computations show, and your town engineer has reviewed the drainage report and has agreed to the results, that even if this does overflow in a 100-year storm and exits out here, the peak rate of runoff is less than the pre-existing condition because we have this stormwater management basin and these small outlets in this outlet control structure. Very, very similar to this lower basin. This is smaller because all of this is taking. We have the road pitched from right to left, so the water goes over. Nothing goes off to this side at all. No impervious goes down to this side. Little impervious comes in up here. It gets captured at this location. and taken across into the water quality volume sediment forebay, again, just like up on top. So after that, when the elevations get too low to get into the upper basin, this stormwater again travels overland in a swale, gets into this stormwater quality basin. Again, wetland plants on the bottom of this. This is a forebay that handles the water quality volume. The water has to build up in here before it gets into those small outlets as described in the other one, and then gets into the stormwater basin. It would spill over this grate if it got to that level, and then it gets into a closed system, not directly into Woodrow Drive. So Mr. Bukovich's question was, if you don't have any curbing, how do you handle leaks? Well, if we had curbing, we'd have to have catch basins and pipes, and that would just take whatever washes off the parking lot directly into a point discharge without any treatment of that stormwater. Not having curbs allowed all this overland flow, which is the best way to treat water off of a parking lot, is over vegetation. The vegetation does a very nice job of removing any pollutants or nutrients that are found on asphalt and washes off in a storm overland for all that way before we get into this basin. Next was reducing runoff. We showed you the report that's part of the record. The town engineer reviewed it. Across the board, there are reductions in peak rate of runoff all the way through, which is consistent with the town's applicable regulations. All from the 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storms, the peak rate of runoff is reduced for the site. And the reason being, I know if someone looks at this off the cuff and sees a 8,400 square foot building plus a 72-car parking lot, you're thinking increased runoff. But the reason why the regulations are in place and that we add these stormwater basins, not only for stormwater quality, but to meter the flow leaving the site, so you just get a small amount over time rather than a large amount all at once. And that is the whole purpose and reason for stormwater management basins, and that's why we have these located here as shown and designed as such. Enhancing water quality, we already went through several, as the town engineer said in his letter, several low impact development water quality features on here. We're taking out the closed drainage systems and avoiding point discharges, promoting overland flow using check dams, permanent check dams to slow the flow and stop the flow and reduce the amount of really anything that can settle out of the stormwater prior to it getting to the water management basin, and then that further polishes the stormwater before it has a chance, if it does, exit to the upland buffer. If anything does get to this point, again, we have over 83 feet overland flow prior to getting to the wetland, and then it has to travel all the way through the wetland before it gets to the brook. And wetlands are very flat, so the time of travel is very long over vegetated areas, so we feel that there's plenty of control for nutrient and pollutant removal from any stormwater from the site. As far as vegetation around Woodrow Drive, that'll be more of a zoning question. But as you can see from this aerial that we had up before, you can see that there's vegetation along this side with the wetlands that is not being touched. Some of this brush, this is where the stormwater management basins would be, but the significant tree lines all up in here are not being altered at all. So from Mr. Bukovich's property, there's, it's hundreds of feet and through heavy vegetation in order to see anything, but we'll go through that more in zoning. The church will certainly talk to them if there's anything that could be done at the entrance. Again, they want to be a good neighbor, but that's more of a zoning related item. Bride Brook being impaired, we just already went through in great detail, all the water quality controls. As you can see from these aerials, it has been farmed for a very long time. This pond was created as an irrigation pond. You could see it didn't exist in 1934, so they actually built a farm road across somewhere in that location and burned up the area and trapped Bride Brook in to form a pond up in that location. And then there's some sort of a small pipe or something under the berm to get Bride Brook out through there. As far as the anadromous fish population, where this crosses North Bride Brook Road, it's a small culvert that goes through 2 catch basins. So it goes into a catch basin, falls down in elevation, goes into another pipe across the road, falls into another catch basin, and then continues out from there. So I would challenge that any fish population could make it through that series of catch basins. It's kind of a dam, if you will, for fish trying to get upstream. Maybe from here downstream, certainly, as it proceeds down toward Bride Lake, I don't know. But as far as getting northeast on the upstream side of North Bride Brook Road, I think it's practically impossible. Turtles and salamanders, I don't doubt that they're, it's a vast wetland area. Again, we have a 22-acre lot, and there's connected to much more wetlands to the north and much more wetlands on the other side. And I know there are plenty of wildlife, amphibians, and reptiles and so forth. We're not touching any of this tree line. All of this area here will remain as it is. The only area that we're working in is this previously cultivated field, as you could see, for decades and decades and decades. The neighborhood down here, we are not altering that either. All of this will remain the same. As the wildlife uses it today, they'll be able to use it in the future the same exact way. One last note on the water quality. Having these fields with pesticides and fertilizers being used over the last 80+ years, according to these photos, we all know that we like to avoid fertilizers and pesticides from going directly into our wetlands without any treatment. And that's what's been going on in the site for decades and decades and decades. This is an opportunity, and what we're proposing here is, yes, a building and a parking lot, but several low-impact development features, water quality enhancements, and stormwater management basins that the site never had before. So it's our opinion that the water quality will actually be enhanced rather than decreased through here because of all the controls that are required to be in place. Moving on, Kelsey Janis and Michael Wisniewski. Kelsey's comments were, again, vegetative buffer, lighting and headlights, and sightline. And again, those are all zoning related items. We do have a traffic engineer on board. We do have a traffic report, so they will be available for questions at the zoning hearings, but those are zoning related items. Michael had a concern of the water that goes to the pond on site, and I'm not sure if the pond shows in this exhibit or not, but we will see. It does show on the site plan. I'll just go there because that loads faster. Okay. Okay, so Michael's property is here at the end of Woodrow Drive. Here's the pond. Again, as we mentioned before, we are tilting the driveway to the north and the west. So there's no runoff of impervious surfaces that go to this side of the road. This parking area, again, is captured by this cross culvert and taken to the stormwater management basin. Everything on this side of the road is grass swale, and the road is tilted that way. So we just have a swale that comes down through there. This portion of the 100-foot review area in the line dashes that will be just allowed to grow back to, a natural state. Obviously, there would be some grass along the road just for sightline and so forth, but the majority of that will be returned to a natural state. So we don't see how this plan will add any water to that existing pond because of the way that it's designed. All the impervious runoff is directed to this basin and this basin. This basin, if and when it does outlet, goes to the wetland, eventually overland buffer, wetland, and then on down into Bride Brook and travel away from the site. In this location, if this overflows, it gets into a closed drainage system and continues in the town drainage system under Woodrow Drive. Next is Karen Urban, 1 Woodrow Drive. A lot of these items were related to zoning as far as the programs in the building, the traffic, the kitchen, whether it's too small or too large. I believe at the end of this, I'll have Randy, Pastor Randy Hyde and Scott Long just chime in quickly just to let you know what their programming is. But the idea is not to have 226 people in congregation, a full 100-person area with people congregating, all the offices filled, all the Sunday day school filled. Those items will be used by members of the congregation on Sunday when they're there. So if they're into Mass, then those spaces are most likely vacant. And I'll let them speak to this. And then after the Mass gets out, then they might be occupying those spaces for a short time while the majority of the people leave. But I'll let them speak to that very quickly so everybody understands that. Everything else is generally speaking, zoning related items regarding the population of the building. Next is Yi Su, 6 Woodrow Drive. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. And drainage, driveway safety, house value, and well water. So house value and driveway safety, as we mentioned several times, are zoning related items. We do have a traffic engineer and who evaluated all this and will speak at the zoning hearings. Drainage we already went through adequately. As far as well water, it's interesting because there is a water main in Woodrow Drive. So if folks haven't elected to tap into public water, if they still have a well, wells are deep into the ground and they tap deep aquifers where water comes, it could be from miles away, that contribute to the aquifer. We don't see any impairment of any surface water, any drainage, and any groundwater related to this. Again, we think it's a betterment because of the fertilizers and pesticides that have been used there for many, many years. We feel that this is a much enhanced design for water quality on the whole entire overall site. The 6th person, that's what was Mr. Steve Wolf from Nathan Hale Drive. Traffic, zoning related item. The next few things, revenue and upkeep, that's probably mostly a zoning related item. I'll let the church speak to that, if that could be their second statement, as far as how they'll build in a reserve for future building maintenance and septic maintenance and so forth. Foot traffic, I don't think it's their intent, and again, I think they should cover that as far as people wandering 300 feet, away from the church building and over to the pond. I don't believe they plan on using the wetlands or the pond. I mean, those areas are for, typically we want to encourage recreation in and around wetlands and education and so forth. I don't believe that they plan on any heavy foot traffic, maybe an occasional person walking through, but that's it. As far as the environment with exhaust of cars, again, it's probably better answered by them. I don't think there's any proposed idling. I think the only idling there has been is due to COVID, which we hope is as an end in our near future. So I don't believe there's any proposed idling of cars. It's just a standard park lot. People go in, park their car, go into the church, turn off the car, turn it back on to leave afterwards. So I don't see that as being any major concern either. Lastly, Cipriani Tyler from North Brybrook Road, talking about wildlife in the drainage calculations. Wildlife we talked about before. Again, that whole entire area between the cultivated area that exists today and the Cipriani's property is all going to remain the same in there. As a matter of fact, part of the 100-foot buffer that has been cultivated for many years is going to be allowed to return to a natural state, will no longer be cultivated. So eventually shrubs and woody vegetation will grow up in there, and eventually it'll be an increased forested buffer in there. But there are no changes, there are no major tree clearing between Cipriani's property and this. So we feel that the wildlife will utilize the surrounding wetlands and buffer areas the same way as they have been for many, many years. The drainage calculation, he specifically mentioned whether it assumes that the parking areas are filled with cars, but for runoff, it doesn't matter if they're filled with cars or not. It has a paved surface. So we assume that the entire thing is paved, whether there are cars sitting on it or not. It's still an impermeable situation. So that all enters into the drainage calculations as impervious. And we go through the drainage report and the analysis based on that assumption. So whether the car is there or not doesn't make it more impervious than we've already assumed. So I think that covers everything, unless, Mr. Chairman, there's a note that you made that I didn't cover, but I think I was pretty thorough in covering most of the comments.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if anyone had a question they felt might not have been covered, they could also let us know. But I think you did a good job of keeping track of everything. And, all of those were the questions that seemed to pertain to the wetlands. So with normally we would conclude this portion. Can we go back to seeing everybody, Jen? Normally we would conclude the public comment at this time, would we not?
Yeah, I do have a question. After listening Joe's explanation, even though
Introduce yourself again, please.
Pardon me?
Could you introduce yourself again, please?
Yes, this is Eve Su. I'm living in 6 Willow Drive. After I listened Joe's explanation, it made me more concerned about the water coming to my house. Because all the water will come into the left side of the parking lot, right? And then they will go to the large basin and then go to the lower small basin. But after that, it will go to the public. But how about to my yard, to my house? I want to see how the water is not coming to my yard, not coming into the house. Because my yard, my house is in the lower end of, that. So in here, I'm talking about my house in here, right? All the water will be here. And then my yard, my house in here. So why the water will be coming bypass my house and go from this way? I don't get it.
I think Joe is going to attempt to answer that question with the map that he just put up.
Yes.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Go for it, please.
Okay. So Yi, I understand your concern and try to explain this in layman's terms the best I can, but these dashed lines on this plan are contours, lines of equal elevation. So a lot of portion of the fields right now drain right down. If you follow these contours, they drain right down toward your house right now in this direction. So the idea The idea with this is we're not taking area from over here, tilting the driveway and forcing it to the left. What we're doing is taking what naturally kind of flows to this area, and we're bringing it through these basins, and these basins direct the stormwater, and they enhance the water quality, and they reduce the peak rate of runoff. So a lot of this area here right now that comes down and contributes to your property is being collected in these drainage features and treated and allowed to stay in the pond rather than just rushing down the hill toward your property. And then it's metered through these structures very slowly through small openings over a longer period of time. Instead of a large amount of water all at once, these meter that flow so it's a small amount over a period of time. Anything that gets here, that's closest to your house, there's another basin with another one of those structures here. And if this basin overflows, it doesn't go toward your yard. It actually gets into this system here and goes into the closed system that's below Woodrow Drive. So we definitely did take that into consideration. We didn't want any, obviously, increased runoff, and we're not allowed to, by regulations, have any increased runoff go over property lines.
Does that make sense how he answered your question?
Yes, it kind of, but I don't buy it. Okay. I don't buy it.
Yeah, he has the right to answer your question that way. So we have to.
I understand, but then I don't buy it. The water won't listen, especially in the storm raining.
Yep.
Right? You have that, right? The water won't listen to your direction.
No, understood. And we hear your concerns, and we, you know, in fairness to the applicant, we completely understand your concerns. And at this point, you know, we you know, unless you have another thing, we should continue to move on.
Yes. Okay, I agree.
Thank you.
I put my concern there. Yes.
Exactly. I totally understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we reserve the right to just keep our opinion. And then if later and you build out everything and then something happen, and we will take action and to against it, that way we say.
Understood.
Yeah. You say you're right, and we say we're right. But let's see in the future, and what's happened. If something happened, just say what's the just not to look like what you say, and probably we'll take action to make a correction.
And it's Stephen, right?
Yeah, this is Stephen, and with 6 Woodrow Drive.
Stephen, and just to be clear, let me go. Just to be clear, I'm the chairman for the Wetland Agency. I have nothing to do with the applicant. It's actually our job to sit here and hear the applicant's opinion and hear what you guys think. We are kind of the judge and the jury that listens to the matters relating to the wetlands. So please understand we are not the applicant. Mr. Wren and the church are the applicant. Just so you know. So thank you for giving us your concerns. We understand. It seems, you know, obviously you have an opposition to this, and we understand that, and we hear you.
Yeah, and I give you example. Eversource tried just to put a power line post in the COVID sack there, and then we just talked so many people, and I said no, and that's the power line post that cannot put in our property line, and then they continue to want to do that, and then we just make so many calls, and I said we talked to Eversource and said if we continue to do that, we go to court to settle this issue, and later they changed their mind, and they just put the post there on the roadside and put the power line post in the original place. That's our experience. That's our story in that property. But now, the post move of them now, and you just open a new driveway there, and that's a devalue our property.
Understood.
In that case, because this is the only entrance for the church, and that's really just impact our property, our life, our safety.
Right. Again,
and
please.
Probably our health.
Again, please understand that is a matter you can bring before planning and zoning. Unfortunately, this is not something that our commission can discuss. The last thing.
Okay, I just bring up my voice, and that's I will use everything, every opportunity to bring up our voice,
All right,
to say this, to just state our concern. Yeah.
All right. So at this point, I think we have another person that had a. I'm getting a message right from Jen. Doug had a photo he wants to share. So Jen, you want to share that yourself?
Yeah, I need just a minute to log back into my town email because I had logged out of it. So bear with me for just a minute. Okay, and
And it looks like Cheryl has her hand up, or I don't believe it was a Cheryl, it was another named person. And Tyler.
So the video or the photo that I shared with, or I sent to Jen, I think it is that's one from my backyard. That was October of last year. So, you know, to the
Doug
this is Doug. I'm sorry, Doug to Woodrow Drive. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
But the video, or the picture, if she can get it up and share it with everybody.
It's going to be a minute because I have to rotate the photo because it came through upside down.
Sorry.
Bear with me for just a sec.
That's okay.
You mind while she's doing that, so that you have the picture, could we take a comment from someone else and come back to you?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. So we'll mute. Where'd you go? There, you're jumping around. We'll mute you. You're muted, and then we'll take a comment from Cheryl. I unmuted, or I asked to unmute you. You can unmute yourself now if you want. Hi, Cheryl. Are you there? Or
This is Mike, Cheryl's husband.
hi, Mike. How are you?
I have a question. At the beginning of all this, you guys talked about 300-foot uplaid
Versus 100.
versus 100. Would that impact this project?
No, sir. This application was made prior to our modified upland review area, so that would not pertain.
Okay.
To
I
application.
could sleep tonight.
It's a smart question, and it's something that we all think about. Thank you, though.
Yep.
Is that it, sir?
Yes, sir.
I also have a Tyler and Heather Cipriani that have their hand up as well.
Yep. Should we unmute them? There we go.
Hi. So 269 North Bridebrook. I just wanted to make one quick comment, and I guess this is probably I can only say is my personal opinion, even though I have a feeling more people also agree. Obviously, we understand where the church is today, but again, looking at all the plans, and we understand, oh yeah, they're only at 35 cars right now, but all these plans and all these proposals, I think is allowing for up to 226 plus 72 vehicles, and people have given their own personal opinions about how many cars and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, does this plan fit in what obviously is technically listed for a lot of people and should make a lot of people feel safe and good? Probably, but I think a lot of us, again, I can only say my personal opinion, but are looking down the road in the future if things take off, but I guess that's my only comment about that. And also for I guess anyone or Mr. Wren, whoever is the best person to ask, I guess my question was just was really technically just about why salamanders were picked out. If there's a specific reason, is there a size cutoff on animals? Do you guys only does the Wetlands Agency only look at certain types of animals? I was just curious, why was that the only animal that was really picked out? Because I think, as we all know, there's a lot of animals that live around us in this area. Was there something special about that? Was it its specific location, which is why that was picked out? I was just trying to understand that rationale behind that letter about the salamander animals and why that was the only thing picked out.
Tyler, Gary up
Yep.
in here, Chairman. Really, our purview is to focus on the impact on the wetlands, and not to speak for the applicant or the applicant's attorney, but they're typically going to comment, in that particular case, it was believed to be a vernal pool, but they're going to comment on that type of life as opposed to, let's say, a coyote or a squirrel or something like that. Not to say that it's not to diminish the importance of any of those beings on the earth or environment, but it's really, we have to focus. Our attorney can read you it's really boring dribble, but we have to focus on the impact on the wetland and then how that would potentially impact the organisms. So that is why you would hear that type of comment. It's not that they don't care about something else. So when the life were commented on and so on and so forth. So I do want to keep this guy focused. We are wetlands. I do appreciate your zoning and planning questions. I'm going to remind everyone, if you guys could please keep from commenting about those matters. We have to really focus here, guys, on the wetlands matter. Is there anything else, Tyler?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I didn't mean to. Please don't think I was shutting you up. I just want to make sure that you understand our job and what we're really.
Yep. No, like you said. Yep. Good. Thank you.
Our hands are tied too.
Mr. Chairman, this is Joe Wren. I could add to your response to Tyler.
Sure, Mr. Wren, go ahead.
We are required to, when we go out and analyze a site, Mr. Snarsky, who flagged the wetland scientist was on earlier, he goes out and flags the wetlands. If he identifies any open water bodies that may or may not meet the definition of a vernal pool, he has to look into it to see if it does meet the definition of a vernal pool, because those are treated as special wetlands. The East Lyme regulations kind of treat vernal pools similar to all other wetlands. Other towns have a greater upland review area for vernal pools. But we have to make that determination if they are vernal pools or not. So that's why they look for the amphibian. They only go out in basically the month of April, when the amphibians, frogs, salamanders, so forth, have egg masses in these vernal pools. And that's when they could identify if it is an active vernal pool or it is not. So that's why he went out in April, provided that letter, and was looking for those salamander eggs.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. That really answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Joe. Would anyone like to take a break? We should let. Sorry, I apologize. We should let Doug make his comment about his picture, seeing as it's up here. I apologize, Doug.
That's okay.
There he is. He's right there. Go for it, Doug. What do you
Yep, so Doug, 2 Woodrow Drive. So I'm on the corner. I really feel I'm probably going to be the most impacted by the additional water runoff on this side. This is my backyard in 2019 October. This was a rain. I think it was close to a 24-hour rain, so maybe not normal, but my yard gets like this every time it rains. And I know your topographical map says this happens once every 100 years. I can tell you it happens once every rain. So as Sue was saying, that, oh, I'm worried about water in my backyard. Your maps can say that, but like she said, the water is going to go where the water wants to go, and this is where the water goes, into my yard and into my neighbor, the Wilbur's yard. I can't speak for her. I don't go up that far to see, but this is what I can see from my backyard, and this is current runoff without any change in any structures.
All right.
So
anything else, Doug?
No, that's all I just want to share when she kept saying that. So I want to, I'll get the rest of the pictures and the videos to Jen, just for the record.
Yeah, and we should really just start to taper this, guys. If anyone else from the public has anything else they'd like to say or concerns, at this point, I do want to begin concluding the public comment. Mr. Wren has an opportunity still to answer any other further questions. Does anyone else from the public have anything to say at this time? I do like to run things very loose, per se, but we should tighten things up. It's 10:14. Not seeing any or hearing any, I'd like to make a motion to take a 5-minute break. It's 10:14 p.m. We'll return at 10:20 p.m. We will get going immediately because we need to move on here tonight. And also, at this point, prior to, let's take our break. Should we do that? Is it okay? All in favor? Mr. Gaisha, go for it. Sorry.
I was going to say, as we know that there are still some outstanding items, maybe before we take a break, you could motion to continue the public hearing and we can move on with the agenda items.
Yeah.
That sounds good. But we could conclude the public comment, could we not?
Well, certainly, the public hearing will be continued to the next regular scheduled meeting. So we're not shutting them off, but have another meeting to speak. But for the evening, certainly, I think we've heard everyone's comments.
Yep. All right, so do I hear a motion to move this to our next, continue the public hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting in December?
So moved.
Move, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, there we go. All in favor, a show of hands, please. I can't see your hands. Rosemary, Dave, I don't know where Don went. Jason, Kristen, myself. We have everyone in favor. Don, are you Don and Phyllis, you guys there? You good with, you okay with that? Yep. Don, I can't hear you. Just put your hand up if you're good.
They both nodded and put their hand up, yeah.
Oh, they're good. All right, good. Great. All right, so motion is to put this forth to our next meeting. Thanks. And now let's take a break. It's 10:16. We'll take a 5-minute. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Catch you guys in a minute.
Gary, it looks like Don is trying to get back in. He must have restarted his computer.
He's like, are you clicking admit? I won't click admit. You click
Yeah.
admit. We'll confuse the thing.
There he is.
All right.
Hold on. Let's make sure he's there. Don, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Is everyone back?
I think so.
Let's see, Dave Schmidt. I don't see Mr. Schmidt.
Hey, Dave.
There he is. Hello, Dave.
He's there.
He's going for a walk down the boardwalk.
No, I'm actually making a bowl of ice cream with hot fudge.
Perfect.
Do you have enough to share?
Well, if you could figure out how to do that over Zoom, you're welcome to.
All right, guy. Are we good to continue on then?
Yes.
All right, great. So at this point, it's 10:25, November 16th, 2020. East Lyme Inland Wetlands. Jen's clicked record. Thank you, Jen. We're going to continue on with the agenda items now that we've finished taking things out of order. The next item is public delegations. This is a time when members of the public are invited to speak to our commission about certain matters, issues, or concerns related to approved wetlands permits, and in-house proposals or general topics of discussion are open to comment. Agenda items, referrals, applications, subject to a decision by the commission, a public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. The members of the commission will not directly answer questions or make comment during delegations. Do any members of the public have anything to say in public delegation following that brief? If so, please raise your hand, say something, unmute yourself, ask to unmute yourself. Jen, do you see anyone popping up? Send a chat, do anything you want.
I don't see anybody popping up. A lot of people are the remaining people from the prior public hearing.
All right, we'll go under the assumption that someone does not have anything to say in public delegation. Moving on to the next item, acceptance of the minutes, meeting minutes of the October 19th, 2020 regular meeting. Commission has had a chance to review these meeting minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 19th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Got a second from Mr. David Schmidt. All in favor by a show of hands to approve the minutes of the meeting. I have Mr. Diebel, yes. Kristen Chantrell, Mr. Fimmons, sure. I have Rosemary Ostfeld, David Schmidt. Moving on to the next page. Where are you? Oh, there you are, Phyllis. Thank you. I saw your hand, Phyllis. All right. Motion is approved. Moving on to the next item, the ex officio report. Mr. Daigle, I do see you're still here. Hello, sir. What do you have for us?
Just a couple things. At our last meeting, the Board of Selectmen did approve a recommendation from the Police Commission to purchase new body cam and vehicle video recording equipment. And that has been passed along to the Board of Finance for approval. And as I stated earlier this evening, we do have an item on our upcoming agenda to identify a replacement for your agency. And that's about it for big ticket items. We did have the kickoff meeting with the contractor for the public safety building. They've started some preliminary work, trying to line up a few last of their subcontractors, and should be starting in earnest here pretty soon. Mostly working the inside work this winter and doing the outside work in the springtime. So pending any questions, that's all I had to report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. Appreciate it. Next item, we'll hand the mic over to our town attorney, Mark Zamarka. New business, Brian Lipkowski versus Town of East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency et al. Memorandum of Decision, February 25th, 2020. Review by our attorney, Mark Zamarka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gaishel asked me to briefly.
Hold on one second. I see
Sure.
Chris Chantrell.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just going to recuse myself for this discussion.
All right.
As the members of the agency might recall, this involves the second of two applications that was made by Real Estate Services of Connecticut, or RESC, regarding the Twin Valley Lakes CDD subdivision. The first application was denied in 2017, after which RESC appealed. While that appeal was pending, RESC filed a second application that addressed the issues from the first denial. The second application was the subject of a public hearing. During the public hearing, the plaintiff, Mr. Lipkowski, filed a petition to intervene pursuant to statute and section 9.1 of the Inland Wetland Regs. In September of 2018, the agency approved the second application, and Mr. Lipkowski appealed that decision. In essence, his claim was that the activities caused by the development were reasonably likely to unreasonably adversely affect the public trust in air, water, or other natural resources of the state. Because he was an intervener under the environmental statutes, he was limited to making environmental arguments. During the appeal, briefs were filed by all parties, and the matter was tried to the court on December 18th of 2019. As the chair noted, the memorandum of decision was issued on February 25th, 2020. Judge Susan Handy of the New London Superior Court dismissed the Lipkowski appeal. The court found that the Wetlands Agency properly considered all the relevant factors. The court found that there was substantial evidence in the record to support the decision approving the second application, specifically noting testimony from the Ledgelight Sanitarian, the town engineer, and even Mr. Lipkowski's own expert, who found that there was no direct impact on any wetland or water course. The court also found that the plaintiff did not show substantial evidence of any adverse impact, that there was no specific quantifiable evidence of any environmental impact, and that the plaintiff's experts dealt in generalities only and nothing specific. The plaintiff did not appeal from the Superior Court decision, so the matter is a done deal.
Thank you, Attorney Zamarka. Does that conclude your statement?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to pending application A, we already discussed that. Pending application B is obviously the Harvest Christian Fellowship Church. So technically, unless there's anything else we need to discuss there, Mr. Gaishel, we can move on to the next item, no? Old business, it appears there's none. Reports, chairman's report, I don't have anything to report. The Inland Wetlands Agent report, are there any administrative permits issued, Mr. Gaishel?
No, I still have a laundry list sitting on my desk to issue. What I would report is that I would invite the agency to read my memorandum regarding the upland review area at your leisure. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Moving on next, enforcement, item C. Are there any things for enforcement that we need to discuss? No?
Phyllis is trying to say something.
Oh.
Hi, Phyllis. Oh, you're muted now. Hold on.
Didn't we also ask Kristen to come back?
Hey, you know, she's there. Kristen, come back. You can hear us the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Good. All right, Phyllis, go ahead. All right, hold on.
Phyllis, unmute yourself.
There we go. I should be unmuted.
You're good. We hear.
Okay. So my question is, it's regarding the town of East Lyme. The zoning commission approved additional parking for, let's say, 283 Boston Post Road. Now, my question is, this is an application that came before the upland review, the inland wetlands. So this particular application has gone in now and added parking. So shouldn't that application have come through us again? Because it's an adjustment?
Mr. Gaishel, would you like to comment on this?
Certainly. I would say typically, yes, it would require wetland review to see if there were any changes to the plan that would be different than what the agency initially approved.
Right.
I have not looked at the revised plan for 283 Boston Post Road and the additional parking. So I can certainly take a look at that and ask my colleague and my counterpart, Mr. Mulholland, to forward me a copy of that plan.
Okay, but it's already been approved.
That doesn't negate our enforcement ability. If they still have to come back to the wetland agency, then maybe that could be still within their ability to do. If the application goes to zoning and zoning makes changes on something the wetland agency may have already approved, and those changes are different than what they have to come back to the wetland agency. So that may be something that's in the works. I don't know. I haven't talked to the developer regarding that aspect.
Phyllis, do you know when that happened?
Well, I know it was in, let's see, hold on.
Because I don't remember that.
'Cause, yeah,
Zoning Commission, a regular meeting on September 3rd, 2020. Approved it. It was, let's see, request of Theodore Harris, the attorney, for site plan modification for existing use commercial space with apartments at 283 Boston Post Road. And I think it's 281 Boston Post Road for parking. And it was approved. It's effective September 11th, 2020.
I don't think they added parking. But Gary, I'll get you that information, but I don't recall that they were adding additional parking.
Yeah, I don't know. It says parking on it, so.
How does it?
I think they had to make a change to the parking to accommodate the handicap parking spaces. But I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But I seem to recall there was something about the handicap spots needing to be in a different location, or maybe, I don't know. There was an island that had to be moved to accommodate that, and they made them go through the site plan modification process. But I'll find it and get that information to Gary.
Oh, okay, because I don't think I've ever remembered in all these years someone coming back to the inland wetlands for, an adjustment. So I'm not sure what the policy is
It
for
was
town.
something minor, but I remember
Yeah.
Bill wouldn't give them their CO without it.
Yeah.
That's the only part that really sticks out in my mind. It was something very minor, but I will get the information to Gary.
Okay, well then, my other question is on North Brybrook with the application that we denied, and they came back with less building. Now, even supposedly it's outside the upland review area, but my question is to Gary is how far outside the upland review area is it? Because, you know, we've talked about the God rule.
Well, we
So-
voted at our last meeting to actually see the application, remember?
That's correct. And I believe we reported it was available online under the zoning materials. It was up there for a month, that file and that plan. So anybody could have taken their opportunity to look at it since then.
Misunderstanding.
That said, I believe off the top of my head, the closest point was something like, I think it was 35 or 50 feet from the 100-foot boundary, if I recall. But again, I don't recall that off the top of my head. It's up to the commission whether or not they want to invoke their right to call it a regulated activity under the regulations, the definition of a regulated activity.
The person being the person that made the motion, it was my intent that they would have to reapply, not that we would have some memo stuck on a website to take a look at.
The site plan was on the website along with all of their application materials for the zoning application. In terms of reapplying, I have no mechanism to make them reapply to the agency when they're showing activities outside the 100-foot upland review area. It's kind of hard to do. When the site has been designed to meet the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual, our town engineers reviewed it from that. I mean, I'm having a hard time finding a way to extend the agency's authority or jurisdiction. But if
I think the important thing to say, Phyllis, is it's kind of a lost battle because of the legal footwork and the loopholes. We understand what's going on. It seems apparent to me, and I think we have to let that one go.
Okay.
I just think that's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. If anyone doesn't share that opinion, they're welcome to feel free to explain that themselves. But that's, what are we going to do? Thanks, Mr. Gaishel.
Can I jump back to that 283 Boston Post Road I just checked the town website, Phyllis, but I think the confusion comes from the way the legal ad is written. It wasn't about parking. It was a site plan modification where there was supposed to be a small retaining wall, and the adjoining property owner didn't want the retaining wall. He wanted a small fence. The confusion is that the legal ad reads 283 Boston Post Road and 281 Boston Post Road. The parenthetical for parking is because the parking for 283 is on 281.
Okay.
That's why it says parking. There wasn't a change to the parking. The change was at the corner of the property. There was a 12-inch little wall that they were going to put, and the neighbor didn't want it. They agreed between the two neighbors to do something else, and they wanted the commission's stamp of approval, and they got it.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
But it seems getting to the core of your concern, Phyllis, that you're saying when something changes after it's approved, you're concerned that it comes back.
Right.
Perhaps something we work on in our next iteration of the regulations that we change.
Well, it was something that Joe Wren mentioned when somebody said a question about the parking, and he said, well, if we need more parking, we'd have to come back to you guys.
Right.
So it kind of confirms that it's part of a procedure that's supposed to be done. So that's why I questioned it.
Got it.
Okay. What?
I was going to say, I think in relative to the previous application, that comment was because the agency had passed the text amendment to extend the upland review area to 300 feet. So basically, the regulated area will encompass that entire parcel. Any additional work beyond what's in front of you now would actually have to come back. Wouldn't have a choice.
Anything else, Mrs. Berger?
Nope.
Thank you for your input. Correspondence, enforcement, we're over those matters. And now to our favorite but final, the adjournment of tonight's meeting.
There was a matter on correspondence.
Okay, what's that? Sorry.
Barbara Johnston's correspondence to the commission.
Oh, yeah, the one she said she was going to send. So she did send it. There you go. That's right.
It's in the meeting materials, yes.
Right. All right. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up, guys. My computer wants to update all these things. Does anyone else have it in front of them that feels like they're doing a reading drill? Oh, don't everyone jump at one time. I got it.
I have it in front of me.
Dave, you want to read? You want to read me a bedtime story?
No, not particularly, but.
Oh, come on.
I see it says, hello, Jen. I would like to ask if the form named above has an answer from DEEP for the Perry subdivision, and can I please have a copy sent to me PDF? I'm especially interested in the data received. Thanks, Barbara Johnson.
That's all you have, Jen?
No, it goes on, and oh, it goes on for a long time. I'm not going to read that whole thing.
So there's
Stop
some,
now, Dave.
Gary Gaishel, feel free to jump in. There's some correspondence back and forth where she's asking me for various information that I do not have.
Okay.
Relative to the West Lane subdivision, which was formerly known as the Perry subdivision, it came before this agency for a determination of non-regulated activity, and the agency voted to find there were no regulated activities being proposed with the 5-lot subdivision. It went on to the Planning Commission, and they subsequently approved it. I think Barbara may be slightly confused. Typically, with any permit that's issued by the agency, and when they make application, they fill out what we call the yellow form. It's a form we submit to DEEP, and they're just tracking the permits issued and the square footage or the acreage that's being disturbed or modified across the state. That's the reason we submit this. For no other particular reason does the state use this form. But we would never send the state the form if we never issued a permit or an application for a permit was not made. They made application for a determination, and thus there's no further record. We will get her copies of that, the meeting minutes, which I believe has already been sent.
I've sent her she has access to the entire file on Dropbox. She's been sent, she keeps asking me for the legal ad approving it from Wetlands, and I keep explaining that there's no approval. There was the determination, and I have sent that. I literally, the last count, it was 7 times. She keeps asking this question, and I keep answering and sending the prior email and the prior email. As you can see in the email I have on the screen, David Blatt from DEEP has answered her and told her that the forms are received and they're just cataloged. I don't get a receipt from DEEP when I submit these. Typically, we do submit them in sections, like a quarter at a time. And the only receipt that I have that even know that DEEP got them is I send them by certified mail and I get the green card. Other than that, I could probably write Kansas and elephants on them, and I never hear a word from anybody at DEEP to know they're reading them. And I haven't in the 14 years we've been doing this.
I just thought with the correspondence being received, the commission ought to be aware of the situation, and we're managing it as best we can.
Yeah, what's her? Can you guys sum it up for her? What's her root concern?
I honestly don't know.
I don't either.
I know I believe she was in opposition to the subdivision initially. I think she may have spoken at the Planning Commission meeting in opposition, or at least expressed concerns over it. But beyond that, I'm not certain.
I mean, yeah, is she alleging that service wasn't made appropriately or something? I don't
I believe she feels that a wetland permit should have been issued.
But there wasn't an application?
They made an application for a determination.
Right, and the commission at the time determined there wasn't the need for an application.
Correct. There were no regulated activities being proposed.
Okay, so she, I guess, and that's what,
That's what we sent her, is the minutes of the meeting,
hmm.
along with, I think,
And
the
we
form.
did have, there was a legal published that said, because we do typically publish a legal ad for a determination that says that the Wetlands Agency met and determined that no application was required. So she has a copy of the legal, she has a copy of the posting with the town clerk. She has a copy of the letter we sent to the applicant saying that, that the agency met and determined no application, formal application was necessary. She has access, like I said, to the Dropbox with all the Perry information in it for that particular application for both wetlands and planning. I don't, unfortunately, I don't have any more information to give her.
Well, I suppose it's not a, she could be here for a public delegation or our next meeting if she so chooses, right?
Correct.
It's not an open matter. There's not an application. I mean, in which case we could just as a team politely say the same thing that we seem to understand. All right. Well, sounds like it's concluded to me. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Just send the email 7 more times. We'll explain it if we get given the opportunity, right? Maybe she's missing the procedural piece. So is there anything else there? No, we're good. Make a motion to adjourn our meeting. All in favor, show of hands. I've got, oh, look, everyone's disappeared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're good. Good night, everybody. It's 10:48. Nanu, nanu. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Night.